It's now 6:03. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the third meeting of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. The commission is now a whopping 3 weeks old, and we've gotten a lot done in the last couple of weeks, and I'm really excited to have everybody joining us for this evening's conversation. Director Brown, before we begin, actually, I just want to share an update with folks on the agenda. The approval of the previous meeting's minutes is being removed from the agenda for tonight, and will be posted for the agenda at the next regular meeting. And that is for us to be able to make sure that we include some additional information about the discussion on April 22nd, particularly around the public comments that were submitted. So again, that is being removed from tonight's agenda and will be put back onto the agenda for the next meeting. So Director Brown, can you please read the, having called to order this meeting, can you please read the notice of the public meeting?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is a regular meeting of the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Senator Byron M. Bayer Open Public Meetings Act. The Commission's annual meeting schedule was published in the Asbury Park Press, Courier Post, Trenton Times, and Star Ledger on April 29th and ran in the Bergen Record on April 30th. Notice has been sent to the Secretary of State and posted on the public bulletin board outside the Secretary's office. And in addition, notice of this meeting has been and is being displayed on the website of the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Information regarding the virtual nature of the meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic has been included in all notices.
Okay. Thank you, Director Brown. I'll now take the roll call. Commissioner Barker.
Good evening, everybody. Present.
Commissioner Del Cid.
Present.
Vice Chair Delgado.
Present.
Commissioner Nash.
Present.
And Chairwoman Waynu is present. So all members of the commission are present and we now have a quorum. So before we get into today's business, I want to recognize that with the Cannabis Regulatory Commission being only 3 weeks old, I want to really commend my fellow commissioners for all that they've done thus far. Getting acclimated to a new state agency that is still in formation is certainly not easy. But you have all stepped up to the plate really and demonstrated your commitment to bolstering our agency and advancing the commission's work. And the extensive research that you've all done, connecting with others in the state and across the country, and the perspectives and ideas that you've brought to the table have really been indispensable and have really strengthened the commission's position to prepare for developing rules in the coming months, particularly rules that center on our shared values. So I thank you for all of your work that you've put in over the last 3 weeks. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more of the ideas that you all bring to the table and the work that you will all be doing in the coming months. And I'm also very eager to hear from the public tonight about how the commission should incorporate social equity as we build out the cannabis industry. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, as I know it is for all of the other commissioners and the broader public and lawmakers, local officials, all the same. So this is just the first of many conversations that will be had on social equity. So I'm excited to dive right in. But before we get to that public comment, we have to, we're going to hear a little bit about the executive director's report. So Director Brown, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. So in my report for this meeting, I wanted to cover several areas. First, an important announcement just regarding enrollment in the medical cannabis program, as well as a new dispensary opening. Second, because I know this is a process that many are curious about and following intently, I wanted to provide an update on the 2019 request for applications for alternative treatment centers. And finally, I'll provide a brief overview of some of the statutory provisions that are pertinent to today's conversation about social equity and what we all hope to hear from the public about. So today, enrollment in the medical cannabis program currently sits at over 107,000 patients. We have 4,000 caregivers. Those are folks who are signed up to help their loved ones access medical cannabis at one of our dispensaries. There are 1,300 participating healthcare providers. That number continues to grow week over week, just as do our patient roles and caregivers. And with that as a backdrop, I'm proud to announce that the Apothecarium Maplewood, which was approved under the Department of Health back in January, is now open, marking the 16th operating dispensary in the state of New Jersey. I know we have a lot more work to do there. 16 dispensaries is not enough. I think we all recognize that, but important as context, when I started as assistant commissioner for the Department of Health in March of 2018, there was one dispensary to serve the entire northern region of this state. One dispensary open. So while we have tons more work to do here, it's also important to note how far we've come to this point, and the importance of continuing that work. So related to expanding access, which is critical here, I want to provide an update on the 2019 RFA. We've been getting inquiries, and I know applicants that are under consideration are anxious to know the results. And I just want to let you know that we are working to get these applications scored, processed, and awards issued as quick as we can. I think those of you who've been following this process know that pursuant to a court-ordered stay, our process was shut down for a little over a year. There was no scoring happening, no reviews of applications, and in compliance with that court order, not even any administrative work related to that RFA. So now we've been going again for about 2.5 months. And it's a priority to get this wrapped up as quickly as we can. So while we're not there yet, I want you all to know that we are pushing to get this done as quickly as we can. If you are waiting, if you are one of those applicants, please continue to monitor nj.gov/cannabis for updates as we're able to update the full group on progress and next steps there, we will. Finally, I wanted to tee up the public comment portion here by talking through some of the tools the legislature has given the commission to address social equity in the cannabis market and beyond. We want the commission to be a values-driven organization with equity and safety the foremost priorities in terms of those values. Equity first. With that in mind, and also keeping in mind that as has been referenced at previous meetings, we do not at the commission have the ability to go in and change the statute. I wanted to walk us all through some opportunities in the laws that we have been appointed to oversee, operationalize, develop policies for, and execute. First, it's helpful to understand the licensing and permitting structure that the law has put before us. So the laws, one, Jay Koenig's law, which was signed in 2019, and then the legalization law, which was signed in February of this year, authorizes different permit types for medical cannabis and different license types for personal use cannabis. In the medical market, it authorizes cultivators, manufacturers, dispensaries, and clinical registrants. Clinical registrants being vertically integrated permits focused on research and partnering with academic medical centers. Importantly, Jay Koenig's law also empowers the commission, this body, our 5 commissioners, to come up with new permit types as they see fit to introduce to the market. On the personal use cannabis side, there are 6 license types established by law: cultivators, manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, retailers, and delivery. In both medical and personal use cannabis markets, in both those laws, there's also testing laboratories. And cutting across all these permits and licenses, or many of these permits and licenses, are 2 subcategories of permits and licenses called conditional permits and licenses and micro business permits and licenses. Conditional permits and licenses are a kind of a precursor to a full permit. The law envisions the commission being able to provide an opportunity for applicants to get some sort of initial approval before going out and doing what they need to do to get to submit a full application before the commission for licensure. So that's conditional. For micro businesses, which again cut across many of these different permit and license types, these are businesses that are smaller by statute, limited to 10 employees or under. For dispensaries and for manufacturers, there's also volume limits per month. So volume being they're limited to under 1,000 pounds of product volume per month. And then for cultivators, they're limited to under 2,500 square feet of cultivation capacity. Additionally, the legislature has directed the CRC to create via regulation a licensing and permitting process that provide priorities to applicants from impact zones. These are municipalities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And there's a statutory definition as to what qualifies as an impact zone and what doesn't. And we hope to be able to provide tools in the future to the public to understand what is an impact zone and what isn't, and whether or not they qualify under those provisions once they're ultimately in regulation. I mention all these because these are tools that the CRC has been given in statute to help address social equity in the cannabis industry, and tools that we will need feedback from all of you on how to use effectively. We've seen other efforts in other states focus on several areas: mentorship, pairing new entrepreneurs with established companies to get guidance and experience; technical assistance, helping applicants navigate the challenging task of building a business and submitting what tends to be a complex and very involved application; establishing fair but priority treatment in application processes for certain applicants as authorized by law; and finally, assistance and guidance related to finding and securing financing. We are all talking to other states and localities about what is working and what isn't. But importantly, we want to hear from you, the community, as to what you think is working, what isn't. What are the barriers that exist in getting to this market? What should we look to replicate here from other states? What should we look to build anew? What in these statutes before us can help us at the commission make this market a market that is truly built on equity? Thank you, Madam Chair. I will yield back to you.
Thank you, Director Brown. Now we can have a chance to dive right into those public comments and those ideas. So the commission first wants to remind everybody that you have the opportunity to submit written public comments during and after this meeting in writing, and those should be emailed to mmPquestions@doh.nj.gov. Again, that email address is mmPquestions@doh.nj.gov. Information on how to submit comments to us is also available on the commission's website. Please note that comments that are submitted to this email address, they are shared with all the commissioners and will be made public along with the meeting's minutes. Now, in order to achieve the goals and priorities of this commission, really the public's input here is vital. And so today you have the opportunity to share your thoughts, ideas, and concerns with the members of the commission about the very important topic of social equity in the cannabis industry. We'll hear from those individuals who have signed up to speak in the order in which they signed up. For our speakers, please be aware that commissioners may ask follow-up questions after you give your remarks. Last week, we had nearly 350 people watching and tuning into the meeting, and we received more than 65 comments. The prevailing themes of the comments from the previous meeting concerned guidelines for micro businesses, guidance for municipalities on opting in or opting out of allowing cannabis establishments in their jurisdiction, and lab testing protocols and standards that should be put in place. As indicated on our website, the speakers during this evening's public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes each. So please be respectful and concise during your comments. We want to hear from as many people as possible. I believe at last count we had more than 50 people who had indicated that they wished to speak this evening. Director Brown will call out the names of the speakers 3 at a time. So when you hear your name coming up, please don't walk away from the computer. When it's your turn to speak, the director will ask you to unmute yourself. If you're dialing from the phone, you will press *6 to unmute yourself when told to do so. Please note that in order for our staff to unmute individuals who have signed up to speak, your full name or phone number as it appears on Zoom must match the name or phone number you used when you registered to speak. Right now, I'm looking at the participant list and I see a lot of folks who have just their first name or their initials, or even iPhone or a phone number. So please ensure your name matches the name you used to sign up. If you need to change your name on the Zoom app, go to the participants list, find yourself at the very top of that list, click the More button and rename so that we can find you appropriately. If you are joining us by phone, and I believe there are a couple of people who are joining by phone, the phone from which you're calling has to match the phone number that you used to sign up. Again, this is so that we can identify the right speakers. So with that, Director Brown, can you please call our first set of speakers?
Absolutely. So in order, first we have Anthony Russo or Dave Bernstein from the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. So they'll be called first. So you can raise your hand once you hear your name called, and then I'll get to you. Andre Pierre is second, and then Amy Kachalia is third. And apologies if I'm mispronouncing names in advance. So I see Tony Russo here. So I'm going to ask you, Tony, to unmute.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight. My name is Tony Russo. I'm president of the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. We are a business group based in Rochelle Park. And in terms of social equity, I'm going to turn it over to one of our members, Dave Bernstein of CannabisCertified.org. And he's going to talk about a component, and this is really the focus is going to be on educating the workforce, right? And how people are going to be trained and educated. So if you don't mind, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Bernstein, who's going to really talk about his program. Thank you.
Yep, David Bernstein, I've asked you to unmute yourself.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairwoman Waynow, Executive Director Jeff Brown, and members of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. My name is Dave Bernstein, and I'm the CEO of CannabisCertified.org. Cannabis Certified is a certification, workforce development, and exam delivery platform based on a proprietary software used by the U.S. government. We're dedicated to ensuring New Jersey's recreational cannabis program is staffed by well-trained New Jersey residents from all backgrounds. Our mission is to level the playing field so the cannabis career path is available to individuals regardless of the background, geographic location, economic status, and more. I'm passionate about this because I'm a Jersey guy, raised in New Jersey, a Rider University alumni who started an electronics recycling company in Jersey City in the early 90s. And 30 years later, we still employ more than 20 people in our North Bergen headquarters. My experience in certification goes back more than 2 decades as I helped create the A+ certification for computer repair, which is now the leading industry standard for vendor neutral certification for more than 2.5 million people worldwide. I have witnessed the benefits of workforce certification for a new industry with my own eyes. We believe through education, training, and certifications that can be delivered in multiple languages, Cannabis Certified will help New Jersey maintain workforce standards that promote industry safety and growth, consistent with the standards in all industries like accounting, finance, law, education, or vocational trades. We know that only individuals who have demonstrated a basic aptitude meeting state standards should be certified and hired within the New Jersey cannabis industry. An educated and certified cannabis workforce ensures safety, credibility, and further opportunity for career development for many individuals. As a vibrant new industry, these are building blocks that the legal cannabis industry needs in order to mature properly. Cannabis Certified understands the framework for licensing in the state's program will be centered around the 6 classes. There are key functions within each of these licenses for the 6 classes, and it is critical that those jobs and processes are staffed by only the most credible, educated, and vetted employees. Cannabis Certified will work with New Jersey, the industry, and all stakeholders in ensuring that the testing is comprehensive and available to all individuals, but at the same time, giving New Jersey control over the evolving standards all employees or participants will need to meet today and in the future. In closing, I want to thank the Commission for allowing me to provide testimony, and I look forward to working with you in assuring that the cannabis industry's launch in New Jersey is successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Bernstein or Mr. Russo?
I have a question, Commissioner Waynu, of the gentleman. And I'm asking this question as the former vice chair of the Newark Workforce Investment Board. So are you currently working with any workforce investment board in any municipality to accomplish this? Do you have an MOU or a demonstration project with any board, Mr. Bernstein?
Not for cannabis specifically, but for many other certification and workforce development programs, we can certainly provide case studies and examples of how the process will work. But as you can imagine, with the legal cannabis industry being fairly new, and New Jersey, we believe, being a leader with an educated workforce, this is the perfect opportunity to put that in place. So we think the model's there and certainly something we can leverage.
Have you engaged the State Employment and Training Commission yet with your idea?
We have not.
Okay.
But welcome the opportunity to do so.
Okay. I recommend that you do.
Okay, we appreciate that. We certainly will. As we understand, obviously, this is a very new concept in New Jersey for the recreational program in general. But the key component here is an educated workforce and a career path for anyone interested. So yes, we welcome all recommendations and paths to educate what we can deliver, and we think it's going to be a real value add.
Agree. Educated workforce is key.
Absolutely. Certified, yes. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other commissioners have questions for the speaker?
I do, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Bernstein, I do hear you in terms of ensuring that the workforce is, as you said, credible, educated, and vetted. This being a conversation primarily focused on equity and how we're going to address equity in the cannabis industry. Can you share the current makeup of your senior leadership at Cannabis Certified and what the demographics of that is?
Sure. We have a board of advisors that brings over 25 years of certification experience. One of the members of my team is a gentleman by the name of Aaron Woods. He is an African-American gentleman. He's been a close friend of mine for over 25 years. He was actually the initial architect for that A+ certification. And as we go down the road and have these conversations more, he will be a great resource to provide the value add that these certifications have had for him and many of his friends and colleagues. We have a diverse background for all the people that are involved in our team. And it's very important to us that we understand those that are in need and inclusion. And we've designed a platform and a method to ensure that testing vouchers are going to be made available to those underserved and underprivileged, free study guides, and the opportunity to make sure that anyone from any walk of life can have an opportunity to study, train, test, and get certified. So there are no boundaries in terms of race, gender, other than geographic location, which we would promote, obviously, those that live in New Jersey to be certified. But we are a very diverse group of men, women, and all backgrounds.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
Sure.
Any other commissioners?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Bernstein,
Hello.
Commissioner Nash. What is the cost of a program such as this?
Well, we have really looked and researched at a business model that we believe we can do this in a shared revenue model with the state of New Jersey in a manner that through private funding, through Cannabis Certified, we would simply look to have New Jersey share in the revenues of that testing vouchers and study guides, and look at this as a revenue generator for the state of New Jersey. Not something that we're going to look at having to bill you for. The test revenue, the cost for study guides are all to be determined and based off of the economics that would be laid in front of us in order to operate the program. So there's not a fixed cost. Exams can be the test guides and exams can be priced out accordingly. Various demographics can certainly play a role, but we see this as a revenue generator for the state of New Jersey, not a cost.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, Mr. Bernstein, to Commissioner Nassau's question, there will be costs associated with conducting tests and providing these free study guides that you mentioned before. And so, I'd like to hear a little bit more on what you anticipate actually it costs to run a program like this,
So,
notwithstanding your statement about it being a potential for a revenue raiser as well.
absolutely. So there's cost is broken down into really three areas. It's the study guides, providing the content for study guides. There's the exam vouchers themselves, which would be available for sale to the public, although we would allocate a percentage to be made available to those underserved communities. And obviously the operation of the website itself. The beauty of this business model allows for the flexibility and the scalability of the economics of the cost of the exams and the study guides themselves. We want to make this very affordable. We also understand that the economics of running exams and study guides are fairly fixed. So when we have an opportunity to sit with the commission and really get an understanding of the background and what would need to be incorporated into exams and study guides, we would be able to put together a business model that in terms of cost, really, we would not want to have that impact the state. The costs of the exams and the study guides could actually be put together with the mindset of running the actual exams and the generation of the study guides themselves. So because they're fixed costs for the most part, we really can set up the exam costs and the vouchers, the exam vouchers and the study guides to be set up in a way where, again, underserved communities can have access to them at no cost, whereas other communities will pay a fee for the study guides and the vouchers. Until we understand the depth of what the commission wants to see out of an exam platform like this, it's hard to put an economic number exactly on it, but we're very confident the business model, because I understand the certification business, is something that can be done in this way and beneficial to everybody.
Thank you.
David, I have a question, and thank you for the information. You mentioned training, certifications, and it seems like you have a model in mind. Have you done this with any other states, and are there any metrics that shows that it has improved the workforce in those states or in those counties or municipalities?
We have not done this with any other states at the cannabis level. I can speak to 20 years in the computer certification industry, though, where 20 years ago, the IT industry was very different than when it was today. And there was a lack of certification and training in the IT industry at the time. And with the massive growth opportunity of that industry at that time, there was a real disconnect between individuals and looking at a career path in the IT industry. And we're seeing that very similar model playing out with cannabis. There's a lot of interest in people wanting to come to work in this industry. Certifications, baseline aptitude type tests for the specific job functions are incredibly important, because at the state level, we want to make sure these employers are hiring only the most qualified individuals. So you're creating an educated workforce, but you're doing it in a way where the state will have control over what that aptitude is, and can have a model where career paths can be created as a result. So it's not exactly the same, because cannabis has not been done in this model before, but the IT and many other industries from a workforce certification standpoint, whether it's, again, legal, education, vocational, basic aptitude is so necessary in any industry. And because cannabis is what it is, with the interest level from so many people from so many different walks of life who want to have a career here. We have to create a foundation and standards for those people to understand what's involved in getting in the industry and what they need to do in order to maintain the status of working in that industry.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, we will move to our next speaker.
So next,
Thank
we're
you.
going to go to Andre Pierre. Is Andre signed on here? If you are, please raise your hand. I do not see Andre, so we'll go.
Director Brown, you have accidentally muted yourself.
Did not mean to do that. So next, I do not see Andre. So Amy or Ami Kachalia, are you signed in? I see. Okay. I'm asking you to unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chairperson Huenu and Commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today on the issue of creating equity and an inclusive cannabis marketplace in New Jersey. My name is Ami Kachalia, and I'm a campaign strategist at the ACLU of New Jersey. For years, we, along with our partners in the New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform Coalition, have fought to decriminalize and legalize cannabis due to the racially disparate enforcement of cannabis prohibition and the decades of harm caused to Black and Brown communities. Our goal has always been to not just legalize cannabis, but to do so in a way that centers racial and social justice. That means both beginning to repair the harms of prohibition and creating an inclusive and equitable industry that reflects the diversity of our state. We applaud the Commission for convening a public meeting to solicit input on how to create this kind of industry within the first month of operation. In this moment, the CRC, as it shapes New Jersey's marketplace, has the power to ensure that equity is built into every facet of New Jersey's cannabis market, and that it's not just an add-on to this industry and to how we think about the work here. I can't underscore enough just how important prioritizing this is. Evidence from other states show that absent work to intentionally build an equity framework, the marketplace is dominated by white-owned and well-resourced businesses with little room for anyone else. While the ACLU of New Jersey has many recommendations for creating a more equitable industry and will be submitting a comprehensive list in writing, I'd like to raise 3 recommendations that we urge you to implement. The first is to create an equity applicant designation that prioritizes the inclusion of people who have been most harmed by cannabis criminalization. In order to qualify, someone would have to own at least 51% of their business because it's important to prioritize ownership and control. And we also want to make sure that people live in an impact zone municipality for at least 10 of the last 20 years, or they have a cannabis related record, or they're the immediate family of someone who has a cannabis related record. We want individuals who essentially qualify as an equity applicant to then have access to a number of resources, including startup capital, prioritization in the application process, fee waivers, technical assistance, and other kinds of supports that help people build strong and sustainable businesses that support not only themselves, but their families and their broader community. The second is that we want to make sure there's real access to capital available for equity applicants and for minorities, women, and disabled veterans who are interested in starting a business in this industry. We all know that starting a cannabis business is pricey, and that unlike many other businesses, you can't go to a bank to get a loan to essentially start up your business. We know there may be money coming in this area to provide startup capital once there's revenue from the first year of legalization. But that's a really long time for people to wait. And in the meantime, others will get an early mover advantage. And so startup capital is something we need now. And I urge you in your role as the real authority on cannabis legalization in the state to urge the legislature to appropriate additional dollars for social equity and to create a cannabis fund that is housed within the commission to provide startup capital to equity applicants. I also urge you all to ask them to go back to the legislation and to really author new legislation that would allow for people who are interested in starting a cannabis business to qualify for state and local economic development incentives, such as those that are governed by the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. We think there's a lot of resources there, but it would be great if people who are interested in starting a business can actually tap into them. The last thing that I'm interested in raising today.
I'm sorry,
um,
3 minutes are up. So do you mind
all right.
wrapping it up and then we can get to
Sure. So
questions
really
if-
quickly, the last thing is I really encourage you to provide some guidance for local municipalities so that they understand their role in the implementation process, and importantly, how they need to view that role through an equity lens. We want to make sure that there's no onerous fees that are getting put into place that essentially make it impossible for people who are not well resourced, that don't already have a lot of access to capital, to actually compete in this marketplace. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And before I go to question, I just want to note next on deck is Rebecca Osborne and then Shirali Patel.
Director Brown, and thank you, Ms. Kachalia. Any commissioners have any questions for Ms. Kachalia?
Ms. Kachalia, I have a quick question for you. You mentioned, and let me get this because I want to say it verbatim. You said it very well. To repair the harms of prohibition and create equity that reflects the diversity of our state. And then you touched on evidence from other states. Could you share some insight into other states that you and the ACLU think are getting social equity right, or have initiatives that you support?
Sure, yeah. When you look at cannabis legalization around the country, the very early states that legalized didn't intentionally incorporate equity into how they created their marketplaces. And now what we see is a lot of the states that were early, places like Colorado, Washington State, for example, they're going back and they're trying to correct for equity in their industry, which is very hard to do, right? You can't build something and then decide you want to go back and add equity in. There are a number of jurisdictions that I think are worth looking at, and that I would encourage you all to reach out to folks there who are doing exciting and innovative work. There's a few jurisdictions in California. Oakland comes to mind, San Francisco. They're both places that have tried to prioritize the inclusion of people who have been disproportionately harmed by prohibition, to provide startup capital, to provide a level of prioritization for getting into the industry. In terms of states that I think it's useful to look at, I would suggest Illinois and also Massachusetts. These programs are early in their implementation phase. And so I think it's important to know that there's plenty of ideas out there, but that we don't necessarily have years of evidence on how they play out in practice. What I will say is that through all of it, what we hear is that money is incredibly important, right? And so there's many resources that we can provide, things like technical assistance, point bumps, for example, in the application review process, priority for equity applicants in reviewing their application to make sure they don't get relegated to the back of the line just because other people are ready and waiting with lots of resources and a complete application. But absent money, like money talks, right? Absent money, it's very hard for people to start. And so I would encourage you all to look at those other states, to build on them, and to find ways to provide people with funding to enter into this industry.
Thank you, Ms. Kachalia.
Madam Chairwoman, I have a question.
Proceed, Vice Chair.
So, Emmy, I agree with you 1,000%. Startup money talks. Startup capital is key. How do you see this being distributed to equity candidates? Do you see, is the movie in your head an outright grant, or is it a loan, a low interest loan with a payment period? How
Absolutely.
do you foresee this?
So what we would like to see are grants in place for equity applicants who are interested in starting a cannabis business. The whole way through this process, right? It's been over 5 years that New Jersey has talked about legalizing cannabis. And we've said again and again, the reason that we want to do it is because it's been that Black and brown people have just been disproportionately harmed, that there have been people who have been targeted by these, quite frankly, racist policies. And in this moment, as we create an entirely new industry, it's important that we make sure that opportunity is there. Grants provide for that kind of opportunity. We want to make sure that people who qualify as equity applicants can essentially be able to take on this opportunity, that they're getting a fair shot. And that's what we really have in mind when we talk about providing startup capital.
Thank you, Em.
Just to clarify, Amy, so you're saying, you mentioned 2 points. One, to create the equity applicant, and two, to provide some grants or loans or just some financial assistance. Just to clarify on those 2 points, you're saying that you would support providing financial assistance or or grants specific to equity applicants?
Yes, I am. So, and just to clarify, like grants are the ideal. Obviously, low interest loans are a good backup option. But what we would support are essentially grants to people who are equity applicants. So as I said earlier, that's people who have lived in an impact zone municipality, which the state has essentially said are the most disproportionately impacted municipalities in the state for at least 10 of the last 20 years, to people who have a prior record, and then to the immediate family members, a parent, a child, or spouse of someone who has a prior record for cannabis. And I think on top of that, it's important to think too about how to provide startup capital to people who would qualify as a minority, a woman, or a disabled veteran under the office that will be existing as part of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission.
Thank you.
Another question, Madam Chairwoman. Emmy, would you also support the candidate having skin in the game, bringing something to the table?
Absolutely. We want for, and I think that any business owner wants that for themselves, right? I think people, when they're looking to get into this industry, are committed, they're excited to be at the table, and they want to take advantage of an opportunity. I imagine that people will definitely have skin in the game, but that this is not an inexpensive industry to get into, right? There's all sorts of costs that go into setting up a business. Depending on the kind of license someone has, it could be ventilation, it could be a storefront, it could be, other sorts of equipment that are needed to follow all of the standards that will be set in place by the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. So certainly people can have skin in the game, but we think that around the country, people have shown their willingness to, right? They want to get into this industry, they've put money forward. Sometimes that just isn't enough. People need more than that. And I think the state can take a stand to really support people who would like to get into the space, who have, as I said, been disproportionately harmed by our former laws, and to help them succeed and in creating sustainable business.
Thank you, Emmy.
Thank you, Ms. Cachalia. Before we move on to our next set of speakers, I just want to remind folks, please, please, please make sure your name as it appears on Zoom matches the name that you have used to sign up. I see 6 people who are, I think, joining in via their iPhones, and they're just showing up as iPhone in the participant list. So please make sure your name, if you know you have signed up to speak, please make sure your name matches what you've used to sign up. Otherwise, we will not be able to find you, and we want to make sure that we hear from as many people as possible here. I also want to remind folks that you have the opportunity to submit written comments to the commission by email. So I know we don't have a lot of time to dive a mile deep into each item and each idea that folks will be raising tonight. But as speakers keep their remarks concise, I also encourage you to utilize the option to submit follow-up information by email at mmpquestions@doh.nj.gov. So with that, Director Brown, can you please call our next set of speakers?
Yeah, next is Rebecca Osborne, then Shirali Patel, and then Deval Shah. So Rebecca, I see you. I'm going to ask you to unmute your line.
Hello.
Hi, Rebecca.
Okay, I'm here. I'll start off saying I am a very nervous speaker, but I wrote a speech, so here we go. My vision, the new New Jersey, diverse, not divided. The world is in trouble. Mental health-related addiction, disease, and death grows at an alarming rate. Poverty remains unchanged. The media and the politics divide, and the race and sex war rages on. Right now, there are a lot of band-aids in place that are meant to level the playing fields for minorities, women, and the less fortunate, but the band-aids are falling off. How do I know this? I've spent the last 15 years in the construction industry and in business in general, and I walked into far too many meetings as the only female leadership role in the room, and no minorities in sight. In addition to this, I grew up in a very poor community in South Jersey, and I still volunteer there regularly. Sadly, not much has changed there either. Nervous speaker, sorry.
You're doing great.
You're doing great.
Last but not least, as a single mom, I have struggled with anxiety, stress, and depression for as long as I can remember, with no readily available resources to turn to until I found marijuana and the New Jersey Medical Marijuana Program. Whew. But I'm not here to share my story or my frustrations. I have solutions to propose to you if you are just willing to listen and you're open to some big changes. What do my solutions look like? Let me introduce you to Mama Circles, my new nonprofit that I literally started 3 days ago. A virtual community center that will provide a place for people, corporations, and the public to come together and address mental health. A place that will redefine giving back by hosting media, content, donations, events, volunteering, networks, mentorships, and much, much more, all created for the purpose to address mental health. Advanced memberships for individuals who are looking to contribute more in return for being a part of something big, something called change. A corporate partners membership aspect that will allow companies to actively and willingly participate in the elevation of our less fortunate community members in a way that will make a difference in the world of mental health. And last but not least, special memberships for our firefighters, police officers, teachers, veterans, and those who have been harmed by unjust marijuana laws. Let's put our time and money where our mouth is. Sounds good, too good to be true? Well, I have a cherry on top. My dream Mama's MJ Cafe franchise. Not only will it one day rival the coffee shops around the world, but by providing locally grown cannabis and cannabis-related products, but it will also partner with the existing communities and to revamp the community centers to provide a place for people to go for mental health and the cannabis industry. This is the new New Jersey that I envision. And with help from you, our partners, and a lot of grit, maybe even the new legalized cannabis industry, I think we can turn this into a reality, and I thank you for listening. And I have a detailed plan if you want some more information. Check me out at Mama's MJ Cafe and Mama's Circles.
Thank you so much, Ms. Osborne. You can breathe a sigh of relief. You did very well at public speaking. So thank you for your courage in speaking today. Any questions from our commissioners for Ms. Osborne?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a comment. Rebecca, you spoke very well, and as a mental health professional, I am a social worker. I would say that your idea is terrific, and there is a great need for community interaction with people who struggle with mental health disorders. So kudos to you.
Yay! And what was your name? I'm sorry.
Krista Nash, N-A-S-H.
Okay, I gotta say it 3 times to remember a name.
Ms. Osborne, I do have a question for you. So among folks who maybe are struggling with mental health issues, some of them might find relief with the medical cannabis program. I'm really happy to hear that you did. However, there are others who might be susceptible or vulnerable to adverse effects with cannabis. And we want to make sure that the commission wants to make sure that it is approaching mental health needs within the cannabis space in an equitable and public health driven manner as well. Do you have any insight or ideas for us to consider as we begin to communicate with others in the community, and particularly the mental health community, about how medical cannabis may or may not be approached or good for them? Do you have any ideas or suggestions for the commission to consider in that realm?
So I would start with educating people on marijuana. And of course that will stem from the more research that we get in the field. I also think of a part of my Mama's MJ Cafe franchise. One of the ideas was that when you use our products, you agree to partner up with a counselor or somebody for the first, at least the first 2 years, some kind of idea like that. But that way they can monitor you, because that's what I've been using the New Jersey guide, the patient medical journal. I've been experimenting with different types. Some do have bad effects. Some make me sadder some days, and some are like really helpful in getting me out of a depressed mood. Or so I also an aspect is reviews. I want to host on my virtual community center a review and verified reviews of marijuana products and their side effects.
Thank you. Any other last questions from the commissioners for Ms. Osborne? All right, thank you so much, Ms. Osborne.
Thank you.
Director Brown?
Yes, next going to Ms. Patel, Shirali Patel. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, commissioners, for taking the time to listen and allowing us this space to speak up. My name is Shirali Patel. I'm an attorney in the state and founder of Blaze Responsibly. For the sake of time, I'll get right to it. Barriers and problems. The 100% micro license requirement to be held completely by New Jersey residents is an issue because it prevents individuals from having experience and resources from established entrepreneurs or entities in other legalized states, which would bolster their chances of not only winning a license, but their ability to be a successful cannabis facility. So even if there was a caveat that would allow New Jersey residents to give out 5% of equity so they can raise necessary investment if need be, and or create a stronger team. Micro license individuals need help for the applications directly from the CRC, or if there's a list created of vetted firms or organizations that can help guide them, though I can see this becoming a problem too. I just raised this as CRC as you all think about how to create the micro license application so it isn't cumbersome for the lay person to navigate. Historically, it's been more challenging for women and people of color to obtain access to capital in this space, among other issues. If there's a way for the CRC to create a program that could be housed in the to be formed Office of Women, Minority, Disabled Vets and Cannabis Business Development that provides access to zero or low interest loans and or simple grant opportunities, this will allow those who are usually excluded from market participation to actually have a financial means of getting in. Part of the program wouldn't only be financial assistance, but a guided program where applicants are paired with somebody in the industry who can guide them through the application process, provide them with tools and ongoing assistance upon award of a license to make sure that they're successful. Similar to the small business development centers that exist in our state, we need to incorporate that level of help and support for our entrepreneurs who want to get into this industry, who don't have the means or wherewithal to navigate this space, but desperately deserve the chance to build generational wealth. We also need to generate pathways to ownership for individuals that were harmed by the failed war on drugs. My suggestion is for a percentage of tax revenue and or the social equity excise fee to be allocated to create a specific program that provides direct funding for qualifying individuals who served jail time or prison time or were arrested for possession or distribution of cannabis up to a specified amount. Similar to the other program I mentioned for the women and minorities and disabled vets, this program should also extend beyond financial assistance and provide tools and resources required. I want to add more, but note that the CRC is in a way dictated by the enabling legislation that was passed. So if I want the material changes, I will take it up with the state legislature, and I will. I also just want to urge the CRC to consider the implications of federal legalization for when that inevitable point does happen, to ensure how our social equity participants remain sustainable. Thank you for your time and for listening to each one of us.
Thank you, Ms. Patel. Any questions from our commissioners? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Patel.
Thank you.
Director Brown, can you please call our next speakers?
Yes, next was Deval Shah. And I do not see in the participant list. Let me check phone number. No. Okay, so next we're going to go to Jason Bacon, then Michael Sterling, and then Brendan Robinson. So first, Jason Bacon. Jason, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Director Brown, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jason Bacon. Thank you to all the members of the CRC for all of your efforts with launching the cannabis industry in our state and for hosting these public meetings and listening to all of our comments. I also want to personally thank Commissioner Delgado for his service in the military and for sharing his story regarding his incarceration for marijuana possession. Like Commissioner Delgado, I too am a veteran and unfortunately a victim of the war on drugs. On April 26, 2018, I was asleep with my girlfriend in my home when I was violently awoken in the middle of the night to what sounded like explosions. I was confronted by the SWAT team in the pitch black with flashlights blinding me and shotguns and assault rifles in my face. I was handcuffed while naked and was only dressed by law enforcement after being interrogated for several minutes. Meanwhile, my girlfriend was terrified in the bed, surrounded by over a dozen armed men in tactical gear. Simultaneously, another search warrant was executed at my other residence in Clayton, New Jersey. Between both searches, the only contraband seized were immature cannabis plants along with other marijuana-related substances. My girlfriend and I were arrested and processed at the local police department. I was then transported to the Ocean County Jail, where I was denied bail, even though I was recommended for release by the Public Safety Assessment. I spent the next 355 days incarcerated for nonviolent, victimless marijuana offenses. My attorney urged me to accept the state's generous plea offer, a 10-year prison sentence, which I rejected and continued to fight the case, eventually securing my release with bail on April 15th, 2019. I've been on bail for over 2 years now, and I am prohibited from leaving the state to see my family members. Even worse, I am restricted from having any contact with my girlfriend, whom the state erroneously named as my co-defendant, charging her with first-degree crimes as well, simply because she failed to incriminate me during initial interrogations. Moreover, aside from the unjust incarceration that I was subjected to, the state filed 2 separate forfeiture complaints against me, seizing my vehicles, bank accounts, cash, and even my house, leaving me indigent upon my release from jail. Since the agenda for today's meeting is social equity in cannabis, I wanted to share my hapless experiences with the Commission and the public, especially on behalf of those unfortunate individuals who are still incarcerated for nonviolent marijuana crimes that cannot voice their concerns here. With that being said, I strongly believe the Commission has a very powerful tool in effectuating social equity in cannabis. That is the issuance of micro-business licenses. Applicants for micro-businesses should be streamlined and additionally prioritized for applicants that elect to operate and hire their employees within the state's impact zones. Micro-businesses will help the impoverished, minorities, veterans, and victims who have been devastated by the war on drugs enter into the legal marketplace and also help stimulate our local economy. As per the new law, the CRC must award a minimum of 10% of the total licenses issued for each license class to micro-businesses. Nevertheless, in order to effectuate social equity in this new industry, based on the aforementioned reasons, and because the 2-year period limiting the amount of cannabis cultivators does not apply to micro-businesses, and because 100% of the ownership of micro-businesses must involve New Jersey residents that have resided in the state for at least 2 years, I believe the Commission should aim to have 50% of the licenses in each class awarded to micro-businesses. Moreover, if the Commission decides to limit the amount of licenses in any particular class, that cap should not apply to micro-businesses. Thank you for allowing me to share my story and comments today. After everything I have been through, I am very grateful for the language spoken by the Commission thus far and commend all of you for keeping social equity as one of the core issues of your mission, even from the early onset. I look forward to the day when I can submit an application to the Commission and hopefully be a part of this new wonderful industry in our great state. Thank you and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon, and thank you for sharing your story. It's always important for us to remember and take stock in the real impact that New Jersey's laws have on its residents. So thank you.
Thank you,
At this
Chairwoman.
time, I'll leave the floor open to any of the commissioners who wish to ask questions. Hearing no questions from the commissioners, Mr. Bacon, thank you again for your time and your comments. Director
Thank you.
Brown.
Yes, next is Michael Starling, and then Brendan Robinson, and then Antonio Jimenez. So Michael, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, CRC and NJ residents. Thank you for opening up these meetings to a public forum. I am a lifelong New Jersey resident. There's a lot of focus on inclusion in reference to the establishing the industry. However, there should also be focus on exclusion. We, the people of New Jersey, are the ones who fought for this legalization, risked our freedoms to take part in the industry, and pay one of the highest cost of livings in the country. Why should we allow companies and individuals from out of state to saturate our business opportunities? I believe this first round of open licensing should only be granted to New Jersey residents with a strict 2-year residency restriction. Furthermore, cannabis did not become legal today because the upper class was cultivating and distributing cannabis in the underground market. It is and was the everyday lower and middle class individuals that took the risk to make sure this non-harmful plant continued to be a regular part of society. Most of us do not have disposable income to purchase property and pay a team to develop a business model before having any part in the business. This industry should be for the people, by the people who have the passion for cannabis. Until now, the state has earned $0 in recreational taxation. Allowing the truly deserving individuals to establish this business market may make the taxation process longer, but may make the income taxation process longer, but any tax money earned moving forward is greater than the $0 of the past, and it will be the fair approach to take. Many of us are also not business experts, so we ask the CRC to provide detailed guidelines on how to best prepare for licensing. Some of us will also not fall into the criminal record, impact zone, or qualify for granting and funding, but have played an integral part in keeping this industry alive over the years. Therefore, if this industry is truly for everyone, I am confident that the CRC will make the right decisions on licensing for qualified applicants. An idea of rather than allowing medical and large corporation expansion at first, it would be a better transitional marketplace if recreational businesses were allowed to open under a contingent agreement of providing cannabis to the medical marketplace until it is fully supplied. I believe once the recreational market is fully operational, it is likely we will not see as great of a demand for medical cannabis as it will be accessible to anybody of age. Today, possessing 170 grams of cannabis is legal, whereas less than a year ago, a third of that was a life-altering felony. If we want to give assistance to all those negatively affected, the single greatest action the state can take would be to prioritize expunging the records for all those who have been arrested for cannabis. We also ask for full job security when it comes to cannabis use for everybody in the state. Just as alcohol can be used off hours, cannabis should be treated no differently. Thank you for allowing me time to speak. We know this has not been an easy journey thus far and appreciate all the work you guys have put in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starling. Any questions from the commissioners? Mr. Starling, I do have one question for you. With respect to your recommendation that the commission limit the initial applications to only New Jersey residents, how does that reconcile? Or how would you respond to some of the concerns that we heard earlier today about people having access to capital? Do you think that New Jersey, do you think that that need can be met purely within the state, or do you think that out-of-state operators or individuals or entities may be able to play some role even in the early stages to assist people with having the capital needed to start a business here?
I believe that financing coming from out of state to a minimal extent to not owning the complete operation, to assisting those who need capital is a good idea, as well as programs that the state will assist individuals in it. And also, people acquiring personal funding for these businesses, but to allow any out-of-state companies or residents to own a license or open a business, at least for the first round, I think that this is going to be the groundbreaking point of the industry, and it should be strictly based for New Jersey residents.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Starling.
Thank you.
Mr. Starling, just have something I want to clarify, make sure I heard you correct. You talked about truly deserving people. Well, let me rephrase that. You talked about ensuring that truly deserving people having a stake in opportunity in the industry. Did you mention potentially delaying the program if it means getting it right and making sure truly deserving people are have a fair opportunity?
Not necessarily delaying the program as much as allowing it to start from, I guess, more of a smaller business or individual aspect as opposed to large corporation. Obviously, you can allow large corporation to come in, set up shop, and I'm sure it'll be great and efficient, and they'll make a lot of tax money for the state, but it wouldn't be the fair and right approach as to allowing New Jersey residents, obviously all of us will be new to this industry, to establish these businesses from the ground up and eventually earn more tax dollars over time.
Okay. Can I pose a hypothetical?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Would you mind if I pose a hypothetical scenario for you?
Sure.
In a situation, to your point, in a situation where a delay would create a better framework for ensuring that truly deserving people have an equitable opportunity, would you be okay with that? Or is that balanced against the outside operators and allowing them a presence so that we can get the industry moving in the right direction?
I think that's dependent on how long the delay is, but I think a delay would be beneficial to allowing the state to establish the proper form of licensing. At this point, it's been since forever that cannabis was legal. So what's waiting an extra couple months to do it the right way for the people of New Jersey?
Thank you, Mr. Starling.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, thank you again, Mr. Starling, for your comment today. Director Brown, please call the next speaker.
Next is Brendan Robinson. Mr. Robinson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, commissioners. My name is Brendan Robinson. I am a business banking director turned entrepreneur. I am the CEO of the Minority Cannabis Academy and a social equity advocate. I know I only have 3 minutes and I have a couple of things I want to say, so I'm going to get right to the point. One of the things that troubles me listening to this conversation is we're talking about social equity like it's a business. And I'm hearing things about pricing and things along those lines, but I think we really need to focus on the impact of social equity. And I heard some really good things that folks were saying, and I want to go back to that. You know, it starts with education, right? But that education needs to lead to a destination because we've heard folks' stories. We've just heard Jason's story, and that has happened to so many people. There are 40,000 people right now locked behind bars because of this plant we're about to profit off of, right? So when I say it starts with when it starts with education, we have to educate the Black and brown folks who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. I myself am a survivor of the war on drugs. My father was taken from me when I was 13 years old for 10 years because of cannabis. I went from living a standard lifestyle to welfare, food stamps, watching my mother cry every night because my family was broken over this. So we really need to stop talking about this like a business. And when I say that, the Minority Cannabis Academy is something my brother and I put together. We went out and got experts from across this country to teach Black and brown folks how to do horticulture, how to do extracting and processing. If you want to work at a dispensary, we have bud tenders from around the country who are going to come in and show you how to do bud tending at the highest level. We funded it ourselves. And what's troubling about that is we look around and we're looking for state funding, and I'm not hearing anything about those conversations. I'm hearing a bunch of business proposals. We even want to put a mental health program in our platform. These people, these women, these children, these nieces, these nephews, they've been broken by this. We have to have an in-house psychiatrist, maybe 10 of them. And the young lady, I can't remember her name, I think it was Rebecca, was speaking about it. She spoke so eloquently. You did great, sister. It's so necessary. So I say all that, guys, and I promise I'm being passionate. I'm not upset. I'm not trying to, ruffle any feathers. I'm just being very, very passionate about this. We spent $50 billion a year on the war on drugs. We shouldn't be talking about pricing right now. Let's talk about how we're going to educate these folks and put them in a position to not only enter the cannabis industry, but stay in the cannabis industry. I just want to address one more thing and I'll be done. Mr. Brown, you made some really good comments, sir. We appreciate all your efforts. You talked about mentorship. You talked about technical assistance. You talked about securing finance. We need folks in place who have the backgrounds to help do that. One of the things we're going to do with the Minority Cannabis Academy, whoever graduates will have a 2-year mentorship clause. They will mentor the next group for 2 years. We need sustainability. Technical assistance. This industry is ran off of SOPs. We have folks in our pocket right now that can help us with that. So I'm just asking, guys, and I'm going to end it here. I would love to have a conversation offline because it's something I'm very passionate about, and we're excited to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you for sharing the story of you and your family and the impact that the war on drugs has had on your family. Any questions from the commissioners?
Question, yeah, Mr. Robinson, thank you very much, brother. I think you laid that out very clean. Just would like to know, could you share a little bit more insight about your academy, the work you do, where you do it, and how you could see, your work helping New Jerseyans?
Absolutely, Mr. Barker. Thanks for that question. So I see it as twofold. Right now, we're actually finishing up our curriculum as we speak, and we're going to be putting it onto an online platform. And we really see it helping the individuals in the impact zones, right? Because we're going to be bringing these different organizations in here, whether it's cultivators, processors, wholesalers, retailers, distributors, delivery drivers, right? There's a lot of opportunity there. Who's going to train these folks? Who's going to ensure that if we're going to have a social equity clause, which we need, who's going to ensure that we're putting the best people there who fit that mold, right? So we see our organization as in phase one being an online platform to serve that piece. As far as New Jersey goes, we're from New Jersey. We love New Jersey, right? We want to build a facility where we have classes in-house. We would love to have horticulture in-house somehow. Again, I mentioned that psychiatrist piece. I think it's really important. We have someone there to talk to these people who mentally have just been broken and deserve a chance in this industry, who have the qualifications, just need a little support. So to answer your question, sir, I see it as a two-phase piece, but it definitely will help New Jersey, and I think it could go even beyond.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for your time.
Thank you.
So
Director
next,
Brown?
we have Antonio Jimenez, and then Raquel Romans Henry, and then Dr. Monique Hamilton. So first we'll go to Antonio. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening, commissioners. How are we all doing today?
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about, I guess, let me see, your social equality. I had a bunch of other questions. I didn't know this is the direction of tonight's meeting, but I'll make the best of it. Licenses are limited. So if I have a micro license, within the contract of getting this license, could there be an opportunity to grow larger or a full business, whatever way you want to define that, even if there is no licenses available? Like, for an example, if, say, like Miss Rebecca opened up her cafe, right? And she has a micro license, all right? And she grows bigger, but somebody else comes out basically with the same type of idea and they have a full business, but at the time of her trying to apply for a full license, there might not be any left. So maybe with a micro license, there could be something that would allow only the micro license to grow bigger if possible.
So let me just, a question related to the statute. So the statute does provide for the commission to establish a pathway to full licensure for micro businesses.
Okay. All right. So it is already covered under there. Okay. Thank you very much, commissioners. That's all I really have tonight. A little bit unprepared. You guys are doing a great job. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. And feel free to submit written comments to us by email, either during or after this meeting at mmpquestions@doh.nj.gov. Again, for everyone, that is mmpquestions@doh.nj.gov. And just a friendly reminder for anybody who knows that they have signed up to speak, to just verify that your name or your phone number, as it appears on Zoom, matches what you have used to sign up to speak with. Director Brown.
So next we had Raquel Romans Henry, who I do not see signed up here, both by phone number and by name. So we will go to Dr. Monique Hamilton. And I do see Dr. Hamilton. There are two of you, so I'm going to pick one here. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, hello?
You got a little bit of echo there. I think you might be signed in twice.
Okay, is this better?
That's better, yes.
Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Monique Hamilton, and I am the lead physician for the Dr. Monique Hammy Medical Center, also known as DMMC, in South Orange, New Jersey. You can visit us at drmonihammy.com. I am currently registered with the New Jersey Medical Marijuana Program, and I provide patients with medical marijuana certifications for the management of qualifying conditions in addition to lifestyle mods to change lifestyle habits. Myself and other medical practitioners, business development professionals, and social justice advocates are presenting the New Jersey Cannabis Virtual Roundtable, #NJCVRT, on June 4th of this year. I believe the CRC should be involved in more community programs and roundtable discussions to help educate New Jersey communities about cannabis. The focus topics for our roundtable are patient care, health and wellness, business development, and social justice and equity. There are several myths regarding the use of medical marijuana that deter patients, practitioners, and proprietors from the cannabis industry. And I believe it's important to dispel these myths through education to ensure that the community is aware of the benefits of cannabis. There should also be more emphasis on the importance of a bona fide patient-doctor relationship when treatment with medical marijuana is considered. It is important to ensure proper follow-up when it is determined that a patient can benefit from medical marijuana. As with any other conventional treatment, follow-up is required to ensure there are no adverse effects. As a board-certified internist who certifies patients for medical marijuana, a bona fide relationship ensures the patient receives adequate care for the management of their condition. I suggest that it be required to have at least one in-person visit annually with a New Jersey medical marijuana practitioner registered with the medical marijuana program. This will help to ensure that patients are being evaluated by New Jersey physicians and proper follow-up is maintained. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to comment this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Very quickly, before I open it up for other commissioners to jump in with any questions, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Your suggestion was that the commission require at least one in-person meeting.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. The joys of virtual meetings in this COVID-19 world. But Director Brown will unmute you after I ask this follow-up question. But I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. Your suggestion was that we require at least one in-person meeting for patients for what purpose?
So you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes. Currently, I do understand, given the conditions with the pandemic, telemedicine obviously is a godsend at this point. But once things, quote unquote, normalize, in order to ensure that the patients are truly being assessed by New Jersey physicians, I think the requirement of having them be seen in person can help to regulate that. There are like a lot of outside online companies that tend to offer medical marijuana certifications, and these practitioners may have New Jersey licenses but not be necessarily practicing in New Jersey. So to be sure that they are having like that adequate patient-doctor relationship and follow-up, requiring at least one in-person visit, I think would help with ensuring that.
Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, asking if any other commissioners have questions for Dr. Hamilton. All right, hearing none. Thank you again, Dr. Hamilton. Director Brown, please call the next speaker.
So next three, we have Jessica Gonzalez. Then we have Precious Osaji Erese, and I apologize if I'm messing up pronunciations and names. And then Hassan T. Austin. So first we'll go to Jessica Gonzalez. Jessica, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. So first, I'd like to thank the CRC for providing the platform to have this very important and necessary conversation, and for the transparency the CRC has exhibited so far to keep the New Jersey cannabis community as informed as possible. I understand that social equity has become a buzzword in the cannabis industry, but by definition is twofold. It's establishing a statutory and regulatory framework centered around repairing, investing, and uplifting communities harmed by the state's active participation in the criminalization of cannabis, while also providing resources and meaningful opportunities for those communities to participate in the legal cannabis market if they choose to. Not everyone who is harmed by cannabis prohibition is looking to enter this industry, so it's vastly important that this conversation surrounding social equity be broadened to include those individuals as well, as I've noticed that the conversation has been solely on those wanting to enter the industry. In the interest of time, specifically speaking, I'm advocating for the following. I echo Ami from the ACLU that it's important to establish a defined and formal social equity program that contemplates a definition for a social equity applicant, different application tracks, priority system, and lower application fees. There are programs and financial opportunities contemplated in the adult use legislation that is fantastic. However, right now it's tied to socially and economically disadvantaged communities. But if these programs are not tied to social equity applicants, there's little to no guarantee that these communities will in fact benefit. Second, enact a fund prior to the first round of licensing to provide grants for social equity applicants to assist with fees and professional services. 3, enact regulations creating a program to allow vetted educational vendors to apply to become education providers for social equity applicants. 4, replicate the Massachusetts model to allow for exclusivity periods for certain types of licenses for social equity applicants. 5, allow the delivery license holders to access the supply chain, as a courier model may not be financially viable, especially when you consider IRS tax code 280E and the fact that dispensary owners will also be able to deliver their products. 6, state sanctioned technical assistance, because after speaking with multiple social equity applicants in over 5 different states, technical assistance and access to professional service are the number 2 and 3 barriers to entry following access to capital. 7, institute regulations or revisit legislation that restricts municipal provisions that allow any pay-to-play mechanism, as certain municipalities are already attempting to enact fees that only serve to further increase the barriers to entry. My last one, provide alternative avenues to gain the experience points necessary for an application in the legal cannabis industry, so that applicants are not forced to partner with outside operators, especially for micro licenses that require 100% New Jersey ownership. So thank you to everybody for this meeting, and also the public alike for your attention to this important issue, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. You zipped right through those, and it was a little hard for us to keep up there, but I'll invite you and everyone else watching to submit written comments if you want to make sure that the commission hears your voice as well. Any questions from our commissioners for Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I echo those sentiments. If there was a lot to digest there. If Jessica, if you can please send those comments, your statement to the MMP questions@doh.nj.gov email, because I would like to digest it. And I'm sure my fellow commissioners would also like to digest it.
Agreed. Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other questions for Ms. Gonzalez?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Please.
Ms. Gonzalez, I believe you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, the creation of an active fund prior to the initial licensing process. In your experience and expertise, do you think that private equity markets, considering the federal implications and a lot of channels of funding being tied to federal implications, which we have to navigate around, do you think private equity markets are open to providing the necessary capital pre-initial licensing?
Hold on. I think Jessica unmuted her. You should be able to
Yes.
unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, hello. Yep, I was muted. So yes, I will be providing this written testimony. I did zip through. Commissioner Barker, so to answer your question, I do think that it is important, but one thing that I just do caution is that we always make sure that a 51% more ownership is maintained when it comes to these funds, to also not allow for multiples of these funds to be able to take control in multiple companies, because what we're already seeing and what I'm seeing from my perspective as an attorney at the space that sits at the unique intersection of social equity policy, business, and law, is that there are already companies looking to skirt a lot of these lines in terms of control. And so while I definitely would encourage certain equity funds for minority participation, I am very weary about the controlling factor in this when it comes to the percentage.
Noted. Do you have any suggestions for funds that could be creative that don't give you those concerns?
So in terms of the funds, right, one of the issues that we're seeing is timing, right? So if we're looking at social equity day one, it's hard to get that when a lot of these programs are contingent on the revenue fees that we're going to be, receiving from a lot of these from the applications and also from licensing fees. But in terms of establishing a fund, there are other states that currently what they do is they enact fees on their current operators to be able to, medical operators, to participate in the adult use industry by providing a fee. And that fee can go into creating a fund for these social equity applicants in return for the privilege to be able to enter the market first.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez.
Absolutely.
Ms. Gonzalez, follow-up question to your response to Commissioner Barker's first question about, you mentioned that some businesses are trying to skirt equity, real equity in these kinds of partnerships. Could you spell that out a little bit more for the benefit of the commissioners and the public? What ways have you seen businesses trying to skirt the spirit of equity through these kinds of partnerships or agreements?
Sure. So we've seen it in multiple states happening, where a lot of the control, once an operator gets a license, if there's not a certain timeline as to how much they have to hold that license for, then a lot of these bigger operators will come in and will actually take up full ownership of it. But the fact is that here in New Jersey, statutorily, right, we are not allowing, at least for the first 2 years, for folks to have different sorts of interest in multiple types of licenses, which I think was fantastic to kind of move away from the vertical model, at least for the beginning, to lower the barriers of entry. But that is, I know, something that a lot of states have seen that has been swindled in various ways. And so I would definitely urge the commission to keep a close eye on that. And in addition, to keep a close eye on the companies who are certifying as minority, women, or disabled veterans, and to make sure that there's an audit process so that those percentages remain there, not just until they get the license, but afterwards as well, to make sure that the applicants who did receive those designations and who did receive the licenses maintain control and are accurate in terms of their diversity makeup.
Thank you. That's helpful to hear. And as the commission examines and considers different audit mechanisms, there is a downside to making audit requirements that are burdensome, right? And we certainly don't want to overburden people, the communities and the individuals that we are hoping to support and get involved in this market. How do you balance the need for ensuring that a system, our industry is responsible and the people who are operating in it are truly certified as they present themselves to be, without having burdensome documentation or audit requirements on those businesses?
Well, I think probably one of the easiest ways to audit that I don't think would be burdensome is the fact that they are going to have to present an annual certification. So if you have, if you were able to get a license and you were within the 15% bucket for minorities or 15% bucket for disabled, veterans, or women, then in your annual certification, you should be able to certify same. And I think that that's a way that it wouldn't be so burdensome, but just something to keep an eye on.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, thank you so much, Ms. Gonzalez. Director Brown?
So next, we have Precious, who I see here. You can unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. And you are really, really close, Director Brown. It's Osaige Arese.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to allow me to address you and my fellow cannabis industry professionals on the matter of social equity. My name is Precious Osaige Arese, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Roll Up Life, Inc. We are an MBE and SBE certified tech and logistics-based cannabis company that offers a unique and accelerated delivery experience, which covers all transportation needs for growers, dispensaries, and consumers in New Jersey. We currently distribute and deliver CBD. My comments today will focus on social equity, but as it relates to delivery and transportation. With over 100,000 medical marijuana patients and only 16 dispensaries, we're all aware of the huge supply and demand discrepancy that leaves thousands of medical patients without access to their medication. We tally that on average, it takes most patients up to 90 minutes to reach their nearest alternative treatment center. And with COVID-19, delivery throughout the entire cannabis industry has been a turnkey that helped to continue drive revenue. We solely believe that delivery and transportation will be the initial mechanism that helps even out our supply chain systems as more cultivators, manufacturers, and retailers come online. Just as you have, we've based most of our delivery business models on other mature markets, specifically Massachusetts. Delivery has a chance to balance equity, where more people of color can have an entry point into the industry and not only have a chance to create generational wealth, but to create jobs, help our communities, reverse negative stigmas, and educate residents on the plant. However, delivery models, as my good friend Jessica Gonzalez mentioned, often face huge issues being profitable because the regulations can be strenuous on operators who don't have access to the supply chain. We at Roll Up Life ask that you closely look into what happened in Massachusetts regarding equity and delivery in this space. Massachusetts is one of the only states in the nation that set aside marijuana delivery licenses exclusively for minority entrepreneurs for a period of time, a move that other states are looking to adopt to make their cannabis industries more racially and economically diverse. Massachusetts regulations also found a way to give delivery operators such as myself direct access to the supply chain and therefore instantly make it our models profitable so we can help change our communities. A separate license type that was recently voted on called the marijuana delivery operator allows delivery operators to buy products wholesale from growers and manufacturers and sell them to their own customers. This is in addition to their first delivery type license, which is called a marijuana courier. That's sort of what we have that allows an operator to charge a fee to make deliveries from a licensed retailer and dispensaries. Similarly, in the city of Aurora in Colorado, their retail marijuana delivery and social equity program instructs that for the first 36 months, only social equity licensees, as defined by Colorado state statute, will be issued an Aurora transporter license and delivery permit. As we're all aware, the East Coast is legalizing rapidly. New Jersey should be the standard for social equity because we have the opportunity right here, right now, to do so. Lastly, I'd like to applaud the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission on your public meeting so far. There's been a resounding emphasis on building a diverse and equitable legal cannabis market while ensuring medical marijuana patients are kept a priority. That makes us smile. Building Roll Up Life Inc. to be the premier cannabis transporter and delivery service in the Garden State is no small feat. We've been working on this since 2017. However, we are reassured that you as a commission are looking to empower entrepreneurs and bring restorative justice to impacted Black and Brown communities where I'm from, such as East Orange. I always say you cannot be a cannabis operator if you are not a cannabis advocate. So I implore you to build an industry with institutions that have this sort of mantra built into their country. I really thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Osage Irese. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
The Precious is fine.
I, as somebody who has a unique last name, also try to I recognize that names are important, and try my best to make sure I'm pronouncing them correctly. Any questions from our commissioners?
Yeah, I was actually researching the Massachusetts model on the delivery side, and I'm more interested in just to hear from you, Precious, that you have somewhat of a similar business model here for CBD in New Jersey. How many employees do you have, if you don't mind me asking, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so right now it's me and my business partner, Tyann Bryant. We have, I would say, a total of 5 employees that help us out. A lot of it, of course, equity-based as we're growing. We started when we realized that there would be a transportation gap, and my partner, being a medical marijuana patient, he was having a very hard time getting to his nearest alternative treatment center. And his grandmother too. We would have to drive upwards of 45 to 50 minutes. And then with COVID, if you didn't have an appointment, you just kind of didn't have your medicine. So with that, in 2017, he was also in Idaho. So we really started to study the delivery model because we knew it was inevitable. And we knew it was that sweet spot that a lot of people do not think about, but it's super important. So with that, we brought on a CBD vendor, which we currently have on our website, called Best Buds, owned by Amanda Tefstra. And we distribute their products, and we host any other CBD products. So we tested our model in a beta phase by being able to distribute in Essex County. Even though we can ship CBD, we really wanted to make sure that we had the wherewithal and we can build a model that will be able to supply local counties. And as we continue to grow, access will be available.
Thank you.
No problem.
Precious, this is Commissioner Delgado speaking. For my own education, can you tell me about how the insurance companies treat you? Is there a specialized insurance product for your delivery service?
Yeah, so insurance is actually one of the highest tabs on our startup fund because we have a lot of liability, from product liability to insurance of drivers, to insurance of property, to insurance of vehicles. We really have to work with specialists because there's some insurance premiums that will just charge you an arm and a leg solely because you're transporting cannabis. But we have top professionals on our team that are really looking and brought us different quotes that allocate for what we anticipate you guys might bring on as insurance requirements. But we also prioritize security. So we are looking to pay premiums so that we are ensuring that not only our drivers are safe, but product is safe, and that we're building a safe and secure environment to deliver. I like to say we are advocates, but we will operate invisibly. So that's what that insurance is there for.
Because what's going through my head right now is that's an opportunity for equity and social justice, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The CRC working to the extent we can, we're partnering with those insurance companies to see what kind of relief they can provide for equity partners.
And that would be great because relief is not what I'm getting right now.
Right, exactly, through specialized products.
Exactly.
We have to look up and down the supply chain everywhere, under every leaf, every rock, to see what we can squeeze out for equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none. Precious, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Absolutely. Good night.
Good night. Director Brown?
Yes, next we have Hassan Austin, then Nadir Pearson, and then Eli Terry. So I'm going to go to Hassan. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, great. Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Hassan Austin, and I am managing partner of Moving the Needle Media Productions. You know, we're a digital business development company. We create business development content, incubator, accelerator program curriculum with business development professionals, influencers, entertainers, pro athletes, including from the NBA and the NFL, many of which who own cannabis businesses. So educating entrepreneurs is key to success. So first, we definitely want to congratulate the commission and the commission members on this historic appointment to the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. I just wanted to say that we are very enthusiastic about participating in the process with CRC. That said, you know, we would very much appreciate and invite the commission members to join us all, everyone, in this public conversation to to help move the needle on the cannabis industry in New Jersey. And so lastly, I just want to say health and wellness is a matter of priority in all of our lives. Adopting plant-based lifestyles enabled me personally to overcome type 2 diabetes. Maintaining a pre-diabetes A1C, it was very essential to the lifestyle. And this is equivalent to cannabis as an alternative treatment for patient care. So we look forward to talking and learning more about patient care, health and wellness, business development, social justice and equity, most importantly, especially on June 4th, that New Jersey Cannabis Virtual Roundtable, hashtag NJCVRT. So what is the commitment to social equity in New Jersey? To fairness, justice, equality in the form of public policy, distribution of public services and resources, especially those business development resources many of you have already mentioned, like startup capital, low interest loans, contract opportunities. So, you know, these are very important components, but however, implementing a comprehensive and equitable incubator and accelerator program to facilitate and really guide the distribution of those resources, that's essentially key to establishing that social justice and equity. We can quantify equity. So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much for the time. Again, I appreciate the CRC.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Any questions from the commissioners? All right, hearing none, Mr. Austin, I thank you again for your comments.
Thank you.
Director Brown, can you please announce the next speakers?
Yep. So next is Nadir Pearson, then Eli Terry, and then Nichelle Pace. So we'll go to Nadir. You should be able to unmute yourself.
All righty. I'm here. Thank you, Commissioner and the CRC, for this opportunity to speak. As mentioned, I'll get right into it, and definitely would like to, number one, recommend specificity around the definition of social equity. I know this is something that everybody's familiar with now as a term, so would love to see that in legislation as time continues to go on, and making sure that, yeah, there's a specificity around area and medium income potentially of these candidates, residency, and even proposing the idea around tiers of social equity as well, as we've seen in California's market, where there is, not necessarily an all-in-one inclusion, but, different levels of social equity that there exists. One would like to also bring to the point that, the war on drugs is something that, yes, we're talking about in terms of cannabis and nonviolent offenses, but should be considered in all-encompassing as it pertains to the crack epidemic, all these other drugs that have been, Black and brown communities have been persecuted against. So especially I bring this up in terms of the consideration of folks who have family members who were had cannabis arrests. I think there should be a consideration around anybody who's been persecuted by the war on drugs, and that may include other substances. And so, that should be something to be considered for folks as it pertains to the definition of social equity, because these are the families that have been broken up. And it's not, if we talk about only cannabis, then I think that's a limiting perspective in that regard. Additionally, when we talk about the oversight of use of funds, I see that there's a Office of Minority Women and Disabled Veterans for the cannabis fund, excuse me. So, as it pertains to this, it is important for whether the CRC doesn't have the capacity to have specific oversight over the use of funds that will be generated from tax revenue and other opportunities there, so that municipalities are not beholden to taking on the responsibility of where this money goes and what programs this is allocated to, in addition to the sales tax that will be focused for communities disadvantaged. Three, I think we've talked about this, and it's important to bring up again in terms of the speed to market. As mentioned by Jessica Gonzalez, exclusivity around types of licenses is important. We see this in Massachusetts as well, where not starting social equity until we get it right day one is going to be a huge key, because if we're playing catch up here, it's going to be a long game. So making sure that folks in social equity are getting first chance to get into the market. And as mentioned, I know it's important that a lot of these, tax revenues or, will have to start upon businesses entering the market. So, we know that medical operators are already having difficulty servicing the amount of flower and products that the market needs now. So definitely want to make sure patients are getting that. But if they do feel comfortable and confident that they can enter the adult use market and service the entire state or their locality or their region, to make sure that they're definitely contributing to social equity folks and those who will be entering the market after them, as is it a service and a privilege to be in the cannabis industry. And additionally, we'll love to consider home grow as an opportunity. It's not something that many folks have talked about, and I know we're hesitant in a lot of regards, but it is something that will benefit definitely making cannabis more affordable in the state. We see New York have it. We see Virginia has it as well. And I'm surprised that a southern state has it before Jersey. But it is something to consider. And at this point in time would give jurisdiction for police officers to enter homes on the basis of, hearing that there may be a cannabis plant growing within that home. And many of people will, decidedly want to grow at home, which should be a right that we're all granted to some extent. And as much as we can prevent the use of law enforcement and those dollars on prohibition of cannabis, I think that would be a great use. And the last point that I'll bring up is just the potential.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. One more quick one, because you're up.
Really quickly, yep. So the last thing I would mention would be co-manufacturing facilities and the potential for that within the state. Not necessarily forcing everybody to own their own license, but potentially having it so that manufacturers and other folks who want to enter the market can, work on a collective scale and, use space within a collective facility to allow for more operators in the market, especially smaller ones. So thank you all for the time. And I'm representing New Jersey Normal as the Deputy Director.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Pearson?
Mr. Pearson, I have a quick question. Just to make sure I heard you correctly, I think one of the points you touched on was the speed to market. Did I hear you correct in saying we shouldn't rush at the expense of social equity?
Not at all. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's important that, we make sure that social equity day one is a priority and that those folks are, being able to enter the market. We know that big corporations will always find a way to enter the market whenever it is opportunity is available.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pearson.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, Mr. Pearson, thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
Director Brown, please, and it's the next speakers. And while Director Brown is working on teeing up the next set of speakers, I just want to remind folks, you do have the ability to submit written comments to us. We have, I think, about just over 250 people still with us this evening. And we want to make sure that we get, we hear from everybody who had registered and signed up to speak. So please keep your comments concise and your responses to any questions that the commissioners raise also concise, just so we can maximize the number of folks who we hear from this evening. Thank you. Director Brown.
Yes, next was Eli Terry, and I don't see, there's an Eli who's not connected to audio, and I don't see the phone number. So we're going to move on to Nichelle Pace, who I see. Nichelle, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Wayno, Commissioner Nash, good to see you, and the rest of the commissioners. I'm Nichelle Pace. I am the Vice President of the Camden Business Association down here in the city of Invincible. I echo our former speakers, such as Brendan, Amy, also agree with some of the points of Nadir that just spoke. But I want to just impart to everyone listening and the commissioner, this is not a traditional business exercise. This is an equity exercise. This is part of an exercise of a larger economic justice issue, particularly for Black and Brown people that dates back before Prohibition. It means replenishing the wealth that was lost, taken, stolen from previous generations, and also going into the equity and legacy market, folks that have been caught in the middle of the war on drugs. They also have lost, as well as Jason Bacon mentioned earlier. So this impact is not a traditional business exercise. When we're talking about an equity exercise, this is an exercise in economic justice. So just a couple of points that I want to bring out, and then I'll get out of here. One of the things we need to make sure is that we have transparent reporting. So if these benchmarks are in place, there should be no need for a DE&I study in this industry. That reporting should come out every year. The benchmarks and mandates should be hit, and that should be transparent to the public. Another part to bring up is preparation, especially in the communities I advocate for in the state, up and down the state for Camden and other small businesses. We have recently announced that along with the NJ Canada Business Association, the NAACP, Statewide Hispanic Chamber, we are doing a collective push to make sure that equity is at the forefront for our communities. So preparation is key. In our businesses, one of our biggest gaps is preparation with paperwork and financials. So not just things such as grants and affordable fees and waivers and incubators for those who have been previously incarcerated, but things such as financial literacy for our entrepreneurs. There's something called the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program that currently runs in a few places in our state for residents, but you can get those grant and match with a matching grantor to do that for small businesses and entrepreneurs, where they get free tax assistance and financial help quarterly throughout the year. That is a gaping hole to make sure that our entrepreneurs are prepared for this industry. One other thing that I would like to bring up, and as also that should be centered in equity, that we have been advocating for about the past 3 years, is making sure that we are sourcing local. Currently, there's tax incentives for job creation, but the truth is small businesses create the bulk of the jobs in this state. Small and micro businesses create over half to 60% of the jobs in the state, 59% respectively in my county of Camden County. Micro businesses of 20 employees or less create anywhere from 45,000 to 60,000 jobs pre-COVID. So it's incumbent of us to push these large corporations that do want to come into this space in our state, is to make sure, there's a framework for their community benefits agreement. They are investing in things.
One more point in closing, because you're over the 3 minutes.
Okay, sorry about that. And make sure they're investing in things such as mentor protege programs. And finally, you must make sure you have resources and dollars allocated for marketing, branding these programs, communication, and grassroots. Without those dollars allocated to actually promote these programs, as if you were to promote a product, you are not going to reach the masses as you need to be. And I really thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pace. Any questions from our commissioners? Great. Hearing none, Ms. Pace, I thank you again for your comments this evening. Director Brown?
Next is Chuck Latini, and then Hugh Giordano, and then William Sosis. So Chuck, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. First and foremost, thank you all again for the opportunity to comment. Obviously, with any uncharted waters such as this process, the difficulties of how much participation weighed against the ticking clock is also always a careful balance. So good luck. So what standards should the CRC be adopting? One, first and foremost, we heard it quite a bit, education, the tool to success. We need to not only provide access, we need to provide the tools to succeed. So we need to educate on medicinal value. I think first and foremost, honor the medicine, the rest falls in place, including the money, y'all. I would highly encourage you all to also reach out to Wanda James of Simply Pure in Colorado. She's been directly involved with what's going on there at the governor's office. I would simply say that in light of Ms. Gonzalez's testimony, the educational components need to be laid first to ensure successful use of the funds we provide. So, Mr. Barker, on your question earlier, I think, yes, we need to get it right first. Barriers, number one, is to assess and provide recommendations for cleanup legislation. Size and scope of micro businesses is a start. There's going to be a ton of interest in that market and not a whole lot of real estate and space within municipalities to do it. Delivery services, they're going to be fully dependent on full dispensary licenses to really make a strong go of it. So we need to think about that too. Removal of food retail prohibitions, that might also be another one. But another barrier though is the land use question. It's a tricky one. It's a huge barrier that I know my friend Darren Chandler will talk about a bit later. But the cost is one barrier, of course, especially if an application process teeters on a long length of time to hear about whether they're awarded or not, but local zoning as well. There may be some solution within the conditional licensing requirements you've got to create, so I'd encourage you to look at that. Cost, as Ms. Cochilla said, capital is critical. Similarly, as to the costs, and no offense to anyone on the call, applicants shouldn't have to pay for specialized news or some lobbyists to access basic public documents or support for that matter. So something to consider in that. In the legacy market, we've seen through the eyes of, really of privileged folks that have not been impacted by the war on drugs don't really know what they don't know. They easily tune out to the struggle. So it's really up to us all to keep reaching forward and past those barriers of ignorance into a sustainable and long-lasting ways to ensure success. So recommendations for making industry reflective of New Jersey and diverse, again, training and education. We need to set aside a licensing category devoted to long-term success of people of color. That said, a vertical license should be on the table that is explicitly and intrinsically linked towards education, training, and mentorship from and by and for New Jersey people. A license that perhaps will allow micros to be attached to it, so that upon graduation, they'll have legitimate opportunity for full licensure. This is also on this point.
Chuck, at times, so just one more point and then we'll get to questions.
So I think that Ms. Pace is right too. Branding, marketing, and retail, horticulture, manufacturing is absolutely something that you need to consider as well. And so, lastly, doing this with direct contact and support for innovative ideas that lead to actionable hands-on programming. So we're here to help and continue the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latini. Any questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Latini, Charles here. You touched on the land use and local zoning. Did you have any ideas about how the commission could, I know you mentioned conditional licensing, and that's one avenue. Were there any other ideas that you had?
Yeah, it's really hard because how do you give somebody a license when they don't have real estate locked down and the proper approvals? And as you know, the real estate development world is a really difficult place to do anything, even open up a donut shop. So, it's one that I don't really have an answer for, but, as I was thinking about it in the last day or two, something that we need to put our minds to. And I'll share more ideas as I think through it a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Latini.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, Mr. Latini, thank you so much for your comment this evening.
Thank you.
Just a reminder for everyone, we have now heard from, I believe, 16 individuals from my count, and we still have 27 to go. And we just hit the 2-hour mark. So I raised that just so folks can be cognizant of the time. We want to make sure that we hear from everybody who has signed up to speak. So please, if we don't get to the full extent of what you'd like to share with us, fret not. You can submit written comments to us by email, and those will be provided to the commissioners and also made publicly available along with this meeting's minutes. With that, Director Brown, can you please call the next speakers?
Yep, next is Hugh Giordano, then William Sosis, and then James Jackson. So Hugh, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Hello to Director Brown, Chair Waynu, Vice Chair, and the rest of the honorable chairpersons on the commission. As everybody knows, my name is Hugh Giordano, and I represent the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, which is the official labor union which represents cannabis workers from seed to sale on a national level. I wanted to say thank you so much for having this conversation, and we will make it clear from labor standpoint that workers' rights and social equity are the same conversation, period. And we're so happy that New Jersey has the tools to enforce those type of standards, such as labor peace agreements, project labor agreements, and of course, a collective bargaining agreement, which reinforces good wages, healthcare, and safety, retirement, and just a voice on the job. A couple stats that I want to throw out there. Union workers earn more than 10% compared to non-union workers. That's $300 more a week in strong union states that have strong industries, which we can create here in New Jersey. Unions help raise the standards across the board. When we look at social equity and we look at the pay gap, that's a huge issue. We must protect the workers. When workers join a union, between 13% and 18% is the increase in wages for Hispanic workers and those that are African American. This also increases the power to have adequate and efficient healthcare. Unionized workers that are African American and Hispanic, 95% of them have paid for by the employer healthcare, which creates strong and healthy communities. One of the things that's important to remember within the labor movement and within cannabis is that this has been built in the back of working class people, specifically in immigrant and neighborhoods of color. And this is a great opportunity to enforce what the state has worked so hard for, which is a collective bargaining agreement, which guarantees workers' rights. Racial disparities are huge within cannabis, and this is a way to counteract that. Also, occupational segregation, discrimination, union contracts protect against these types of issues. It's important to recognize that Miss Nikisha Lewis from the ACLU wrote a great point. She read a great point, and she said the moment for civil rights and labor rights has always been powered by the same principle, because we are intricately tied to one another. The fight for social justice can't ignore suffering of the oppressed, and they struggle against economic oppression can't close a blind eye to bigotry and social inequality. It's the same fight. Dr. King wanted to implement phase 2, and that's what he was doing when he was assassinated, fighting for workers to unionize basic rights, which we must enforce. And I hope the commission will do this. Labor peace agreements are not enough. We must enforce collective bargaining agreements and make sure that what the state wanted was to create good jobs for those who need it. And nobody needs it more than those communities that have been ravaged by the war on drugs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Giordano?
Mr. Giordano, quick question here. Have you been engaging with municipalities, especially impact zone municipalities, on the opportunity to unionize once the opportunity of cannabis is established?
Hugh, you should be able to unmute yourself again.
Yes. I'm sorry, committee person. Yes, Barker, committee person Barker. I am approaching councils and mayors as we speak, trying to make sure that they pass local standards, which have labor standards, environmental standards, community standards, and other social equity standards within it. And I am actively doing that. Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you. And have you reached out to social justice advocacy groups in that same vein? Or do you plan to do it?
Director Brown, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, we are working closely with the NAACP. We have worked with groups such as the ACLU, Coalition of Medical Marijuana, Sativa Cross, and other groups the UFCW is involved with women's rights, LGBTQ. And we are working with current employers that are doing the same thing. such as the Garden State Dispensary, Verano, which is Zenleaf as well. It's a coalition of industry, labor, and social and community groups because we're all in together. So absolutely, 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you so much, Mr. Giordano, for your time and your comment. Director Brown.
Next is William Sosis, then James Jackson, and then Molly Hartman Lustig. William, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, hi. Thanks, everyone, and good evening, and appreciate what's going on here. I really do. I'm an attorney, a family law attorney. I'm also a medical marijuana user, but I just wanted to comment on something that it's equity and it covers a social justice issue, but it goes beyond that too, because I want to talk about the conventional medicine. I think everybody knows that anybody who cares to look, there's iatrogenic deaths that occur it's like close to 250,000. And these are from sources that are reliable. Like I believe one of the ones I checked was Johns Hopkins, which also reports on COVID. So there's these tremendous amount of deaths that are in the medical community, and about probably something like half of them are from prescription drugs alone. So when we think about all this, and we think about medical marijuana and even recreational marijuana, I think we need to focus on the fact that the benefits of any drug therapy has to be determined between a balance of the efficacy of the drug itself and the adverse drug reactions. And when these adverse drug reactions, which are enormous, of a prescription drug, when they offset the benefits, that the drug either has to be fixed, discontinued, or something like that. And unlike marijuana, which has a history of like 10,000 years or something like that, has never been shown to cause harm. Many of these drugs cause adverse effects that are either harmful, life-threatening, or require more drugs. So I think all of this is important in balancing this issue, even beyond the really ugly and horrible social justice issues that the history of marijuana has to show. So I think this extends into equity beyond the fairness of racial lines, where this has been exploited by I think in New Jersey, like I don't know, anywhere between, depending on the municipality, so many drug arrests between like, I don't know, 20 and up to like 70 or 80% are for marijuana. I don't know. I hope that that's been declining lately, but I just, that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate what everyone is doing. I think this is a great movement forward. As a user, I could go on and on and on about the benefits of medical marijuana and the different strains that are now available. So that's really all I needed to say. And I thank everybody again. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sosis. Any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, Mr. Sosis, thank you for your comment. Director Brown?
Next is James Jackson, then Molly Hartman Lustig, and then Tara Lynn Gonzalez. So Mr. Jackson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. And thank you for having me this evening. Truly appreciate the opportunity for us to be heard. My name is James Jackson, born and raised in New Jersey. I am the head of global cannabis at Mark Edward Partners, which is a boutique international insurance firm. I know the question on insurance came up later, and I'm willing to take any questions as it relates to that. But that's just to give scope to some of the work that I do in the cannabis industry, and having clients in every at this point in every adult use and or medical state. I have a pretty good feel for kind of the demographics of the owners and operators in the cannabis space. Just to be very clear, the 4% number that people like to put out of ownership of Black and brown people in the cannabis vertical is false and inflated. I would say it's probably far less. between owners and operators that are Black and brown. And this is from the standpoint of around the country. You know, one thing that I would say is I definitely agree with the comments of Jessica Gonzalez of Precious. I don't want to repeat a lot of the things that were said, as well as my friend Adir Pearson. But one thing I do want to highlight is, and my main concern for today is that there is an actual social equity applicant status that can be made by the CRC. As you look around the country, and I would say the more progressive cannabis markets that have done a good job with equity have done just that, right? And I do notice that, I guess the way to address social equity or that the lack of a non-applicant status was the micro licenses. And I think that's an awesome step, but I think we have to call it what it is. And if it's and in my opinion, there needs to be a social equity applicant status, and not just at the micro license level. If those individuals, you know, do all that is necessary for a social equity for a social equity applicant status, that should be awarded to them. Another thing that I will say is, you know, just to be clear, I do appreciate the steps that the CRC has taken. I think when the bill was first passed to today where we are, was night and day. What I will say is, you know, being a lifelong resident of New Jersey and being proud of our diversity as a state, you know, me living here in West Orange, I can go out of my front gate and pick and choose what type of food I want from what ethnic background, right? I think our cannabis industry needs to be much of the same, right? It's clear, and I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody knows about social equity and the war on drugs and who paid the you know, the largest price for that. But I'm just here to support an actual social equity applicant status, making sure that those licenses or those status licenses would get preferential treatment and or you know, priority when granting these licenses. And I know a question came up from Councilmember
Mr. Jackson, please, one more comment here, because 3 minutes is up.
No, I'm good on comments. I was just saying from Councilmember Delgado, if you had any questions in relating to insurance, that is my day job and what I do day in, day out, and I'd be willing to field any questions and or have a conversation offline.
No, I don't have a question because right now, you know, it's getting late, and that topic we can talk all night about. So
sure, got it.
James, I'd be more than happy at a different time and place to discuss it. And I think it's worth discussing because there are opportunities there.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any questions from the commission for Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Jackson, if you had to say, I know you said 4% is inflated. If you had to surmise and provide a number that you think is more accurate, what would you say the representation of Black and Hispanic owner operators is in the nation?
I would say below 3%. If being fair, I would say somewhere in the range of maybe 2.7 to 2.9%. And I'm doing this based off the operators that I know, not just my clients, but the operators that I see from around the country. That 4% number is most definitely inflated. I would say somewhere under 3%.
Okay, and just to clarify, is that is that cannabis is operations that are majority owned by minorities, or is that reflective of sole ownership by minorities?
So not
Black and brown.
So not sole ownership. I would, and when I'm saying that, I mean equity, meaning ownership, any ownership within that company, not necessarily majority owned operators. Because if we talked about that, the number would be even lower.
Would you say less than 1%?
It's tough for me to say, but definitely somewhere in that range.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I have more of a statement. I know that there's a lot of
comments that were made about the social equity applicant status. I know that San Francisco has a similar program or a similar model. So I look forward to learning more or hearing more from you all about what the requirements should be, at least for the New Jersey, like what that application should look like, or what the requirements and standards should be for an applicant to be classified as a social equity applicant.
Thank you, Commissioner Del Cid. Well said. If there are no other questions for Mr. Jackson, I'll thank Mr. Jackson for his time and his comment this evening. Director Brown, can you please call the next speakers?
Yep. So next we have Molly Hartman Lustig, then Teralyn Gonzalez, and then Mary Pryor. So Molly, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, commissioners, this evening. I am an attorney at Chasen Lamparello in Secaucus. I am chair of our firm's cannabis practice group, and I am a lifelong New Jersey resident. I represent a large out-of-state cultivator who prides himself on being able to provide apprenticeship opportunities to what we in New Jersey are characterizing as micro business operators, and has in other states been able to fund those who have participated in his apprenticeship programs. He wants to be a part of educating and possibly funding local entrepreneurs, but based on the regulations as presently written, he is concerned about providing any assistance to any entity that might prohibit his own entry into the market and might adversely affect the micro business also seeking entry into the market. Presently, because the regulations prohibit a Class 1 cultivator license holder during the first 18 to 24 months after implementation from holding any concurrent license other than a processing license, and also having any type of agreement with an individual holding that different license type, a cultivator will have issues not only ensuring that their product has a place to be sold, but they may be precluded from entering the market because of assistance and agreements to other entities that are awarded license types. I'd like to see significant direction during rules making in terms of these dynamics between the potential relationships between funding entities and the potential for them not to receive licenses as a result of being part of educational programs.
Thank you, Ms. Hartman. Very quickly, I have a follow-up question. So are you saying that the apprenticeship program that your client currently has or is contemplating is one that would necessarily involve multiple classes of cannabis licenses, or is the apprenticeship program structured such that your client doesn't necessarily have to own interest in other classes if your client chooses to be a Class 1 cultivator? Director Brown, I think she had muted herself.
Thank you. I think can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Chairwoman. It's not necessarily just apprenticeship in a cultivator sense. It could be for any of the license types, whether it be retail, processing, manufacturing, even delivery. He's been able to establish those models in other states and has been quite successful in terms of teaching individuals who want access to the market so that they're able to replicate his model in other states. And what ends up happening in many of those instances is that he has a funding, some type of funding interest, and it may not be ownership, but the way that the regulations are currently written, or the way that I'm interpreting them and others are interpreting them, seems to prohibit him from providing funding sources to any license holder who may hold a license type other than a Class 1 cultivation license type, and potentially jeopardize his own entry into the market and theirs, if such an agreement were to exist.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Any questions from the other commissioners? Hearing none, thank you again, Ms. Hartman. Director Brown?
So next is Teralyn Gonzalez. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Teralyn Gonzalez. I am a New Jersey resident. I am interested in entering into the New Jersey market of cannabis when it is, fully legal to do so. I do believe and advocate for cannabis personally as a recreational and medicinal use. I am a medicinal user as well as a recreational user. However, I do second a lot of what Jessica Gonzalez and Nadir Pearson and Mrs. Precious has stated as far as a lot of the points that they touched on. Some of the things that I would like to point out is as far as some of the things that I would like to see in New Jersey is when it comes to Black and Brown cannabis business owners, is that they are entering the space either with a non-tax with business, not being taxed as business owners. And if that's not a possibility, maybe there can be an implementation where they are not taxed for the first 3 years of business startup, so that they can have some form of standing ground as far as being able to stay in business. And because this has been such an impact on Black and Brown communities, I think that there should be some form of repayment or opportunity for them to grow without any fault when it comes to the state tax. I do believe that with the larger companies that are entering the space, that they can also take on the higher tax rates to help fill that gap as well. I do think that when it comes to the non-POC companies, that they should have a standing percentage of BIPOC people hired for positions, and not just as bud tenders or like low-level hiring position, but as managers and supervisors for these companies. And I think that there should be a penalty for these companies who don't have any type of Black and Brown people, but are trying to use the idea of having the diverse, quote unquote, standing as far as hiring folks of diverse backgrounds. And I think that the CRC should have some form of regulation when it comes to making sure that this is being followed out correctly. I do think that there should be a form of access to capital, application fee waivers for the Black and Brown community. And I do think that from what Mr. Barker, you were relaying as far as there should be a delay until that the social equity component is figured out. I think that that is something that I second as well. I don't think that we should move forward until we figure this out, so that we can get it right and get it done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, Ms. Gonzalez, thank you for your time and your comments this evening. Director Brown?
Next, we have Mary Pryor, who I saw a moment ago, but I don't see now. So I'm going to go to Randy Thompson. Randy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Chairwoman, Executive Director Brown, members of the commission, thanks for the opportunity to offer you a couple comments. Really quick, you're going to hear a couple of things that are repetitive. I'll keep them short. I want to talk about the business profile of the person who's going to be applying to these smaller licenses, and protecting those people from corporations and predations and just getting bumped out even if they make it into the market. So, I mean, the profile of the business person applying for the social equity license or the social equity position would be someone who's arrested, rearrested, incarcerated, reincarcerated, essentially had their life destroyed if they survived the drug war. So you should be looking at someone with destroyed credit, little to no assets, etc. Little work experience, possibly little to no education, did not complete that, little to no business experience. So what do you got to do? But the one thing is that they survived this experience. So that's an exceptional person right there. Build on the strength. The commission has this big mandate on its shoulders to turn those into positives. Just turn those negatives there. That's the job of the commission. And again, you're going to hear repetition here, grants to the impact of populations, business planning, consultation. One thing that may be different from the suggestions here is outreach that is meaningful to these populations. And in the interest of time, if you want to talk about that later or in follow-up, I'd be happy to. Protecting the people impacted. This is going to be from the Walmarts of marijuana. One thing I feel the commission can do is mandate or call for corporate responsibility mandates, mandate corporations to embrace the reform agenda. We know that the drug war destroyed our families, our communities. It has caused police violence, police sexual assault. We watched George Floyd get murdered and they blamed it on drugs, on the broader drug war. So have these more empowered, more privileged actors that want to come into the marketplace, have they spoken about this, or were they silent and now only becoming very vocal? Now the money's within reach. You could mandate that they at least endorse those positions. You could also mandate or call for grants to the social equity applicants. You could mandate or call for fair market cooperation agreements in the applications of these non-social equity applicants. You could also assess as they're applying corporations that are well-to-do, what's their encroachment? What's of their potential business plan? Is that going to make it more difficult for these micro licensees and these conditional licensees? And the last point I want to make with you here is there's a heavy social justice, racial justice mandate in the bill. It wants to send 70% of the tax back to the communities impacted, wants to remove the harms of marijuana prohibition. But if we don't address the broader drug war, the leftover existing drug war infrastructure, the same person that you want to put in the center of this business, he's not going to get arrested. She's not going to get arrested. For that, they will simply use another excuse. We're talking about hyper police populations. And the way you can address this is by making grants with that 70% of the tax money, not just to help business applicants, but make those grants to at least seed some harm reduction activities, some decriminalization activities.
Mr. Thompson, 3 minutes is up, so please provide a quick closing comment.
Closing sentence here, or the grants for the police accountability. That would be an incredible statement, an incredible action. This issue began with our bodies, our families, our communities being attacked. It should end with our bodies, our families, our communities being empowered and protected in the marketplace and as we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions from the commission for Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Mr. Thompson, thank you for your remarks and thank you for sharing what a potential business applicant profile would look like. I know you mentioned arrest. I didn't know if I heard. So I want to ask, is your profile also inclusive of individuals in the legacy market? And since you kind of touched on that, I would like to know your thoughts on bringing in the legacy market.
Could you just clarify the legacy market for me, Commissioner?
On the illicit market.
The illicit market.
Yes, sir.
I think that's absolutely something that should be first and foremost. People, look, prohibition gave rise to organized crimes, to cartels, to systematic empowerment of actors that were already empowered. But people on the floor, on the street, are struggling to get by. It is a path of lesser resistance. Rather than going out and stealing something, robbing something, take something, you use it a little bit or you sell a little bit. This is a common story we've heard time and time again. These are not horrible people. They are people caught up in a horrible policy, in a horrible system. They should absolutely be first and foremost in this, or included in the group that is first, foremost, and center in this marketplace. I think that would help you achieve your goal.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Mr. Thompson.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, Mr. Thompson, thank you for your time and your comments this evening.
Much appreciated.
Director Brown.
Next, we have Isaiah Morris, then Christopher Almada, and then Lefty Grimes. So Isaiah, you should be able to unmute yourself. Isaiah Morris. Okay, so we'll go to Chris Almada. Chris, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you? I'm a medical marijuana patient. I suffered a car accident 4 years ago. And I want to take part of this new cannabis industry. But as a patient, I'm also on disability. I'm still recovering from my car accident. I had shattered my pelvis and I ripped my urethra. And I just started walking again last year. And the access has been rough, especially for me being having a shattered pelvis and having to travel to these dispensaries. And I'm in Morris County, so the dispensaries are pretty far away from me. So I want to take this cannabis industry and hopefully make it more accessible for patients, because we all know, at least I know, many patients will probably use the recreational system in order to medicate. If it's going to be, easier and within, able to be within reach without having to drive 90 minutes or so. But again, I'm a disability, so in order for me to fund a business, it's hard for me, and it's going to be hard for me. So, again, I've heard people before me speak and say, maybe there can be grants put ahead or a solution. So that was just my input of it. I don't have anything else to say. Just want to, thank you for the time and giving me a platform to speak and giving the public to speak. I know a lot of patients would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Almada, and thank you for sharing your story, your experience, and congratulations to you on reaching a huge milestone in your recovery. So I do hope I wish you the best in your continued recovery. Any questions from our commissioners for Mr. Almada? Hearing none, Mr. Almada, thank you again for your comments.
So next, Edward Lefty Grimes. Lefty, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Edward Lefty Grimes. I'm with sativacross.org. We're a 501c3 here in New Jersey advocating for disabled rights and for cannabis patients' rights. I'm also on the medical advisory board for TerraSend currently and advocating for patients over there, advocating for wheelchair access. We were at the State House for 7 years, protesting outside the State House. It was a weekly protest started by Jenny Storms and her son Jackson, who had to move to Colorado to get the medicine that they needed. And we continued their protest. And 7 years later, we're still out there protesting because apparently the sick and dying are not happy. And there's things that we need and we're not getting. And we need your help. We're getting hit from all sides. We're getting, first of all, our medicine's not covered by insurance. And we're talking about disabled people, people in wheelchairs. We're getting taxed by the state 7%. The towns that aren't banning our medicine are taxing it for 2%. And we would like representation for that taxation. If they're going to give us a wheelchair tax, I call it a wheelchair tax, a tax on cancer, a tax on multiple sclerosis. If you're going to tax our wheelchairs, at least give us wheelchair access. Because a lot of these towns like Bayonne, there's no wheelchair access in the urban enterprise zone where able-bodied people can go into the urban enterprise zone for tax breaks, but wheelchairs cannot. So we need to put the last first and consider what it's like to be in a wheelchair and to be a cannabis patient. We're suffering. We need help. Corporate cannabis is giving us moldy medicine right now. And these are people with immune issues. We need help. Our friend Jeff used to advocate with us, and he helped start this 501c3 with us last year. And his message wasn't home grow. His message wasn't wheelchair access. Jeff's message to us was compassion. And all that other stuff falls into place when you have compassion, the home grow, the wheelchair access, all that stuff, it just falls right into place. And we need to do better with that. And that's all I have. You've heard it all. I'll cut it short. I just want to end with this. I end every council meeting with this. We've been to hundreds of council meetings, and I end with this every time. And it really fits for all our patients. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimes. Any questions for Mr. Grimes from the commission? Hearing none, thank you again, Mr. Grimes, for your comments this evening. Director Brown?
Just wanted to say to Mr. Grimes, I remember meeting with you, and you brought your friend Jeff and his wife in to meet, and it was a privilege to hear your perspective. I just wanted to say that we know we have a lot of work to do, we certainly commit to doing that. Thank you for all the advocacy that you and your colleagues have done in this space. So next, we're going to go to Daniel Ramos, and then Travis Ally, and then Adam Ramos. So I don't see Daniel Ramos, so we're going to go to Travis, and I see Travis. So Travis, you should be able to unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Travis Alley. I'm the founder of 93ID Inc. We're a vertical applicant from the 2019 RFA process. We are a true Black-owned company. There's no management agreements behind the scenes. We own 70% of the equity. We have a labor peace agreement, the UFCW. We have the best doctors in the country, the Knox docs out of Oregon. As far as cannabis research is concerned, we have the best growers, the best manufacturers. So as we talk about social equity, I just want to see it actually happen. There's been a lot of rhetoric, but it's very action. And I'd like to say, as a Black man who was specifically targeted by the war on drugs, I think the main thing the CRC can do as it relates to social equity is be specific. If we were specifically targeted, we should be specifically dealt with when it comes to equity licensing. And we all know the drug war specifically targeted Black men, brown men, the poor, and the formerly incarcerated. And that's who we should be discussing when we talk about equity and nobody else. Additionally, I think the CRC needs to have interviews and talk to applicants about the process and some of the shortcomings. Because if the CRC is serious about creating an equitable marketplace, the licensing process is completely broken. As currently constituted, the licensing process is really about real estate, politics, and access. And that's it. Somebody mentioned earlier, should we not have skin in the game, AKA financial investment? The answer to that is yes. To help create an inclusive market, the state should be operating as a broker. Connect applicants with investors and property owners. Evaluate applicants on their ability, their team, and their story. Evaluate investors and property owners separately by the same criteria. Then the state, in the form of the CRC, pair successful applicants from each group together in a way that makes sense, either by region, investment ability, or investment with investment need. This would be revolutionary, make New Jersey stand out from the pack, and the CRC could just do it without any new legislation. In my email comments, I also included an offer sheet we got from a company whereby we would be, me and Levi would be the owners, but they would own the economic interest 95%. Just as an example of some chicanery that goes on in this business or in this marketplace. And as it relates to ordinances and zoning, for a big city like Newark, there was only 4 buildings in the entire city that were even options, and they're all owned by the same person. And that same person delays and delays and delays because he's working against you, right? So it's really a lot of underhanded things going on. I also like to say that we have another company, because there's a lot of talk about micro licenses, right? And without from support, they're going to fail as well. We have Bud Box Farms. We make turnkey hydroponic farming systems for cannabis cultivation and manufacturing that we want to give away basically with no money up front, right? Because I think the money is the barrier, the money and the access to equity applicants without any upfront costs, and we pay the legal fees and walk them through the application process. The idea is to create an innovation hub of multiple micro licensees that can all share and be mentored collectively, and we can help graduate them through the process. And I think that's necessary, or else the micro license will fail as well. And I want to just real quickly, briefly respond to some of the points brought up here today.
Yeah, Mr. Ali, just one more comment here because we're over 3 minutes here.
Okay, we're not. I was timing it, but it's fine. Real quick, training is great. Certification is a horrible idea. I hope you guys do not take that up. Micro license should remain Jersey only. You should not need money to get in. I second Jason Bakeman's recommendation on the micro licenses. A delay, to Mr. Barker's point, is a great thing. We've been in delay as of 2019 for over a year and a half. So forgive me, people can wait until we get the social equities right, because right now it's completely wrong. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Allard. Any questions from the commissioners?
Oh, Mr. Allard, can you just share, and if it makes sense to discuss it offline, I'm happy to do that in the interest of time. Could you just express some of those hardships that you face?
Yes.
And things and suggestions for the next round of applications?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. The main thing that CRC should do is divorce the process from real estate and ordinances that the towns may put forward. You should not need political buy-in, and you shouldn't need real estate. And right now we're talking about, even with micro licensees, right? You say 2,500 square feet, that's not that big, right? But good luck trying to find a building that's zoned properly, that you have the funding for, that you can build out. You won't have any. The micro licenses are going to go to privileged folks that have the right skin color or gender. And that's a guarantee. Unless you have some sort of funding, or like what I was talking about with our company, Bud Box Farms. Like, I'm really surprised. I've been interviewed several times on TV. We've had dozens of articles written about us, and I've sent dozens of emails to the CRC. None have been answered, and you guys have not asked me any questions. So if you're going to put out a new licensing framework without talking to the people who've been through it, it's going to fail just like it's failed to this point.
Appreciate that feedback, Mr. Allard.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, Mr. Ali, thank you so much for your time and your comments this evening.
So just we'll go to Adam Ramos next. Just a note, we're having some power issues here at the CRC offices, so I'm going to step away here to see what's going on. So it's Adam Ramos, then Usman Khawaja, and then Darren Chandler. So we'll go to Adam first. And I do not see Adam Ramos. So I do see Usman. Usman, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Hi, how are you doing? My name is Usman Khawaja. I'm the owner of Sugarlees, and I started this company about like 4 years ago. Been going back and forth. I've been around corporates. I've been around people that has money, but it never goes to come to show that a lot of this community is about love. It's about weed. It's about bringing people together. You can teach someone about it, but not everybody wants to learn in this industry. And justice, we're going to see it from day to day because this industry is new. And from us having this meeting right now, we already ahead of the game. And we're making a difference as we speak. And I honestly gotta say thank you for that. Sorry if you can't hear me. But it wasn't really a problem of social equity till now. And that's even for other states as well. We're one of the first people that got to have this opportunity. And one of the first things we're doing is we're sitting with the people like us, like the rest of us that want to get this opportunity, and we do not have the money to be able to do what we're trying to do. And as minorities, they never had this opportunity. And they went through the most problem and the most financial failures and the repetition of just being, if you had to sell weed or not, if it's without the license or not. But they're the one who had to go to jail. They're the one, I went to jail. I got kicked out for this. And I'm still in this business and trying to make something. I'm going to be applying to be able to get an application. I just got a retail store. I'm literally going to be in an operation to be able to try to get, if everything goes right, to be able to have a retail store for Sugar Leaves and want to be part of the culture. And it's more than just that. And the way this business is going and the way that we are coming together, it's a huge thing because more than half of us voted for this to be able to go down like this. More than half of us wanted this. 2/3 of the people voted for this, but a lot of us is minorities and we are not going to get this opportunity for more than once. So it's got to be more than just about education, money. We have to really sit down and make a department if we really want to work on social equity, because we want to go back and make a department that has something to do with nonprofit organizations that they can connect with CRC when it comes down to application for the people that has been affected by the problems and everything around it. And when it comes down to it, if we can work something that has to do with the time, because the time is never a luxury that we're going to have. You guys are not going to have it. And sometimes that's the reason why application is going to get overlooked. That's why the people that doesn't have a lot of money don't get the same opportunity as the people that know somebody in the back room, somebody can speak for somebody and refer somebody. So if we want to give opportunity to everybody, you're going to have to give us the time that we can both agree to disagree and want to work together to build something, because this industry is new. And as of right now, we're setting a huge milestone by talking about it, to sitting down with the people to figure out what you guys want out of us and what we want out of you. And it's at the end, if everyone gets what we want, we have to figure out what is the best way and how we're going to go about it. But it is for the people, because the people and the minorities, the people that has been affected by this plan. And it's been going on for centuries. It's been going on for years. It never was like this. So if we really want to do this, we're going to have to come together on this, because there's an opportunity for all of us to grow into this and learn something from it. And that's all I have to say. And I really thank you for giving me this opportunity, and hopefully looking forward to working for everybody, because I've heard a lot of stories from the people that spoke before me. And as you can see, like, people have been through a lot of stuff that it's not going to just change overnight, but you're going to have to give us an opportunity, and that's all we want, and work with us. And I thank you for that. You guys are already doing that, and that's a huge step in the right direction for us and for you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Kawaja. And thank you for sharing your story and your experience and your desires your ideas and what is needed to make sure that people who have been impacted do have a meaningful opportunity to participate in this industry. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Kawaja? Hearing none. Thank you so much, sir, for your comments and your time this evening.
Thank you.
So we can chalk up power going off to another another new experience in state government. But let's go to Darren Chandler next. Darren, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? My name is Darren Chandler Jr., and I am president of Premium Genetic Partners. We are a 2019 vertical minority applicant, and I'm also a lifelong New Jersey resident. I want to thank the CRC for this forum and allow me to participate. I think the main goal for you guys really is you need to create an actual social equity plan and create the requirements and criteria for our version of a social equity applicant. We can take the best elements for specific markets that have social equity plans like Illinois, Massachusetts, and now Colorado. Recently, my mentor, Wanda James of Simply Pure, worked very closely with the Denver mayor, and they passed 2 bills that really help social equity and inclusion in the market. One of the new things now is that every licensee is required to submit a social impact plan, which outlines their company's diversity and inclusion plans. In a footnote, some of the benefits of social equity applicants in Illinois, they received reduced license fees and low interest loans for capital. The main problem that really exists is that you need to release the 2019 award. Awarding new applicants is the easiest way for the CRC to start creating diversity in the market, as there are currently no minority operators in the state. As a form of restitution from the 2019 lawsuit, we should also expand the number of licenses that are going to be awarded in 2019 to jumpstart the industry. And you already have a pool of applicants that are ready to go. For future RFAs, and I want to double down on Chuck, my really good friend Latini, and Travis Allen. I've been a real estate professional in the state of New Jersey for 10 years. Social equity applicants should not have to require real estate prior to be awarding a cannabis license. It's just entirely too much money for a license that's not guaranteed. You're putting people in financial hardship before getting into the industry. My recommendations for the CRC is that we need more transparency, especially in the license scoring processes. As seen in your 2018 lawsuit, the previous department's medical license scoring model was deemed unreasonable. And from my own personal experience as a 2019 applicant, I have not received one official correspondence from the state regarding my application, and there's still no clear deadline on when the awarding will be. We need to increase the goal of minority awarded licenses to 50%, and specifically in the non-micro license category. And within that minority designation, we need to increase the percentage of awarded Black applicants since they've been affected the worst by the war on drugs. We need to specify how the minority license percentages will be broken down by business category. I think that minority vertical and cultivated licenses should be a priority. For future RFAs, we need to bring back vertical licenses. We need to limit new non-minority MSOs from participating in the New Jersey market for the next 3 to 5 years. And we also need to cap existing New Jersey MSO operators from continuing to expand for the next 3 to 5 years. Also, applicants finalists should be required to have an interview with the CRC to show the actual diversity of the team and outline their company's plan for being a community partner. Lastly, to incorporate the legacy market, you should offer them a conditional micro licenses, and most states' social equity applicant, one of the requirements is that you have a criminal record due to the cannabis laws. And that's pretty much it. Again, my name is Darren Chandler, Premium Genetic Partners. I'm the president, and we're a 2019 RFA minority applicant, completely Black owned. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. And like Ms. Gonzalez, you zipped through those recommendations, and as you can imagine, after 3 hours of writing,
I tried to fit into 3 minutes.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to submit those recommendations in writing to us by email.
I did already. When I submitted my name in the hat to speak, I also submitted my comments as well. I might have cleaned it up a little bit afterwards, but yeah, it's there.
All good. All right. Thank you so much. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Chandler? Hearing none, Mr. Chandler, thank you again for your time and your comments this evening.
Thank you.
Director Brown.
All right, next we're going to Leo Bridgewater. Leo, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Director Brown. And thank you, Chairwoman Wainu, for allowing me this, and the other commissioners for allowing me this platform to speak tonight. Again, my name is Leo Bridgewater. I am the National Director of Veterans Outreach with Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I am also co-founder of Cannagather, New Jersey. At one point, Cannagather, New Jersey was the largest cannabis and hemp networking event held in the tri-state area. At one point, we were seeing 300 to 350 attendees, 75% of them being already activated entities within the state of New Jersey. I've also gone and petitioned different municipalities from Sicklerville, New Jersey, all the way up to Shrewsbury, New Jersey, and beyond. In 2016, I testified in Senate committee to have post-traumatic stress disorder added as a qualifying condition to the New Jersey medical marijuana program. And then Governor Chris Christie said, oh, y'all got it back. Congratulations, sorry.
Sometimes state government works, sometimes. Please continue, Mr. Bridgewater.
You all look good. Okay, so 2016, then Governor Chris Christie signed that bill into law. And since then, I've done a massive amount of advocating on behalf of patients, veterans, and just New Jerseyans, period. When I got into the New Jersey medical marijuana program, there were just over 7,000 patients. I was a trimmer at Breakwater Alternative Treatment Center in in Cranberry, New Jersey. With all that experience and exposure, be it from legislative elements to literally legacy elements as well, both here in New York and New Jersey, I can tell you that, and you can all see that education or lack thereof is what's prominent here in the state of New Jersey as we move forward. I beg the CRC to take a regional approach when thinking about these licenses as it relates to what's happening in New York as well. That being said, I do think that creating an equity, I'm also one of the 2020 class of 2020 Ease Momentum cohort, the incubator accelerator for cannabis businesses. And I can tell you that based on those experiences, even out west, it's what's happening here has not made it there in their data share. That being said, it is important that you all do take a look at the organizations that have been fighting the fight, such as organizations like the Coalition of Medical Marijuana New Jersey, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, Women Grow, organizations who have receipts dating back to 2016 and then some. And with that, I won't take any more time and let you guys enjoy the light. And if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Bridgewater. Thank you for your comments. Any questions from our commissioners for Mr. Bridgewater? Hearing none, thank you again for your time and your comments this evening. Director Brown, can you please—
That's Electrician Brown to you. No, so we have Alpesh Patel and then Valerie Woodson and then Adam Umansky. So we'll go to Alpesh Patel first. So Alpesh, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to start off, I'm not as eloquent as some of the other people that have gone. I'm just a simple minority business owner from New Jersey. I've operated a business for 20 years. We have 15 employees, and I couldn't even begin to explain the licensing process. So obviously, I need to go micro business. So my thoughts were pretty simple. It seems to me the CRC has the opportunity to just say, hey, you know what? We'll make everybody's car the same in the game. All we're going to accept is micro licenses. This way, it's like NASCAR. Everybody gets the same fair shake. Everybody has 18 months to grow their business. Everybody can do the same thing. And it makes it fair. It makes it so large corporations can't just come in and crush the little guy. It makes it so the large corporations that already exist don't crush the little guy. Because the little guy, we're already forced into a glass ceiling by being pretty much pushed towards the micro businesses. And I think if the CRC just took a step back and say, hey, you know what? They only gave us minimum. We can have 100% minority women and vets. Because as we all learned in elementary school, you can break one stick, but if you have a whole bunch, it's impossible to break. So we could just have a whole bunch of small businesses, all starting in the same place, all being given the same opportunity to grow. This way, when it comes time for federal legalization, we as New Jersey can move out into other states. And we have the knowledge and we have the built infrastructure. And I think it's possible. I think a lot of the minorities that are in a position that could easily open up the businesses are just saying to themselves, look, we're going to get crushed because we're being pushed into micro businesses, and the big guys can get bona fide labor contracts. Like, we've had 20 employees for 20 years. I don't even know who to call to get a bona fide labor contract. So I don't know. It just seems like we have that opportunity to just say, you know what? We're going to give everybody the same horse in the race. Everybody can just open micro businesses. And I think there's more than enough people and more than enough minorities, women, and vets in New Jersey that are capable of coming up and stepping up to the plate and opening these businesses. And I agree. I don't think it should be tied to the real estate that's available. I think people should be able to apply for a micro license, get awarded that license, and then go out and say, hey, I have a license. Let me lease your place. Let me lease your building. This is what we're going to open, and then jump through all the ordinance hurdles and all that, because it's going to come. Everyone's gone through it, even if you're just putting up a donut shop. The amount of town ordinances is mind-boggling if you've ever had to go through it. You know, so
Mr. Patel, please, one more comment, because we're at 3 minutes.
that's it. I just think that the CRC has an historic chance to really make a level playing field. And I thank you guys for opening it up for everyone to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Any questions from our commissioners for Mr. Patel? Hearing none, again, thank you, Mr. Patel, for your time and your comments this evening.
Thank you.
Next is Valerie Woodson, then Adam Umansky, then Tamisha Woods. Valerie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening. I am a co-founder of the New Jersey Alliance for Minorities in Cannabis. The Alliance aims to end the inequity within the cannabis industry and to create opportunities for employment and ownership among those people that have historically been negatively impacted by cannabis sales. We are a group of New Jersey residents who believe access to information and community action can transform our state's industry into one that is both fruitful and equitable. I've been listening this evening, and it's been a wonderful conversation, and I would like to thank the commission very much for hosting this and having this conversation. And there's so much that we agree with, and we've started hosting on 4/20, we hosted along with another group in New York, Cannabis 101, and we're hosting digital events looking to provide information for people about the cannabis industry in New Jersey. Everything from hopefully employment to a question comes up. Our New York counterparts are doing expungement coming up in a couple of weeks. And I've heard everyone talk about everything from how you re-enter, how do you re-enter? What is the process in New Jersey for helping someone? Is there going to be expungement? In my own research of trying to do this, I didn't realize that New Jersey was the #1 state in the country for cannabis arrests. And with that, there are so many people, there are a few million people who have this barrier to even entering the cannabis industry that is being created right now by the commission. So we'd like to help people, and we don't know where to go, don't know who to talk to in the government. We would love to and have started planning expungement clinics, but there is a huge hole in the beginning as we start this process, and to where do people, how do we bring this to the forefront? What types of applications do people need to fill out? What type of lawyers? Is there free legal counseling? What is the commission's position about expungement? It's a kind of a big question mark right now.
Thank you, Ms. Woodson. Very quickly, the legislation that was signed into law does explicitly address expungements. So it is in the law. It doesn't fall within the direct purview of the commission, but rather the courts. The other state agencies have play a significant role in expunging people's records. But if memory serves me correctly, the provision does require the state to proactively expunge the records of individuals who had been convicted of several cannabis-related offenses in the past. So happy to follow up offline for more information, or to direct you to the appropriate place for some of that information that you're looking for with respect to expungements.
We appreciate that. Can I ask just one more quick question, please? As we are planning our digital events, Could we reach out to the commission to participate in some of the conversations with people as we move forward?
Yeah, that should be fine. And we'll provide information on how best to do that when we follow up with you after the meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Woodson from the commissioners?
I have a question, Leanne, but it's more about just informational. So the website to the director that the Attorney General put out after the law was signed is njoag.gov/marijuana. So there you can find not only that director, but also the FAQs that the AG's office put out.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Delcid. Anything else for Ms. Woodson? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Woodson, for your time and your comments this evening. Director Brown?
The next, we have Adam Umansky, Tamisha Woods, and then Brian Cooper. So Adam, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So we've heard a lot, I'm sorry. Good evening, Commission, and thank you for this time. We've heard a lot tonight about what social equity means. And something that we haven't heard at all is about a topic that is very dear to my heart, which I know a lot about, which is the use of cannabis for religious purposes. Now that cannabis is legal in New Jersey to possess, use, burn, smoke, eat, and give away, it's necessarily legal to use cannabis for religious purposes and to congregate to do so. Some religions that have historically and presently used cannabis are Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Rastafarianism. Regulations that are intended to govern the cannabis business space should not in any way criminalize or otherwise burden the sincere religious use of cannabis. A good analogy would be the way that Jewish, Catholic, Episcopalian, and Lutheran houses of worship are allowed to give away alcohol without any regulation and without any suspicion or accusation that they're somehow running a wine business. And now that cannabis is legal, the same view must be taken about the use of cannabis for religious purposes. Federal laws like RFRA and RLUPRA, as well as many federal court precedents, have affirmed the importance of protecting religious freedoms. And in the past, the universal prohibition against cannabis was used as a justification for denying religious cannabis practitioners their rights. With the legalization of cannabis in New Jersey, these arguments used by the state are no longer valid. The state cannot articulate a compelling interest to treat cannabis and religion any different from alcohol and religion without potentially violating the rights of practitioners and potentially triggering liability under federal laws and court precedents. So in order to ensure the preservation of religious rights, the state in crafting its regulations for the cannabis business space should either explicitly carve out an exemption from business licensure requirements for individuals and religious associations and organizations which use cannabis, or explicitly and intentionally omit religious cannabis use from the regulations because they do not apply, with a declaration stating as much. I basically read to you my prepared comments that I have submitted as written comments, but I wanted to go off that a little bit and just say that we've heard from a lot of businesses, but there's more to social equity than business opportunity. And I think that includes access in general. And as a religious cannabis practitioner, I can attest that I've been persecuted. I'm just a drug user. I can tell the police, look, this is, cite all the stuff, court precedents, whatever. New York and New Jersey, I have been, arrested for cannabis. And
Mr. Umansky, just one more comment here because 3 minutes is up.
Sure. I guess the main point is that it's worth investigating on your part whether or not where religious cannabis use fits into your licensure intentions, because it's a reality of religion. As controversial as religion sometimes can be, it's a reality of life in America, and this is an issue that is going to come to a head in one way or another, I guess, or it's something that needs to be dealt with. And I appreciate the commission's opportunity to let me inform you about this this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Umansky. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Sure, Umansky is fine.
Umansky.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Umansky. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Umansky? Hearing none, thank you again for your time and your comments this evening, and for sharing something new that we haven't heard yet tonight with respect to religious services. Director Brown?
Yep.
I believe we have about 15 more people signed up to speak. We're a little past the 3-hour mark with 170 individuals still with us. So thank you everybody for hanging in there. And I encourage folks to continue keeping their comments concise so that we can get through everybody who had signed up.
So next is Tamisha Woods. Ms. Woods, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd like to just start by thanking you all for this opportunity and for this significant work that you're doing here. As well, I'd like to just, as the daughter of a veteran, thank all the veterans that are likely on this call tonight. Thank you for your service. It's greatly appreciated. Lastly, I'd like to also thank Brendan Robinson for helping to redirect the tone to what we really, want to say, want to discuss here tonight. And also my twin, Tanisha Woods, your fellow TCNJ alum, says hello. She's here with us this evening as well. Okay, so I'll get to our recommendations. Firstly, as a Rutgers University biochemistry alum, I'd like to, also state the importance of diversity hiring practices in, the sciences, the laboratories. I propose, we recommend that diversity hire incentives be given for laboratories as well, and that they, scout through partnerships with organizations such as the National Society of Black Engineers, Society of Hispanic Engineers, National Organization for the Professional Advancement of Black Chemists, etc. We also recommend that more points be awarded for social equity managerial hires versus lower level jobs. Additionally, a lot of people talked about funding tonight. We would also like to add that we would also like to put forgivable loans on the table, as well as subsidies or state contracts for consulting and legal fees. And also someone brought up real estate, which is vital, very vital to getting into this industry. And speaking of real estate, we recommend that the state provide tax incentives for real estate owners who lease to social equity applicants due to the increased rent prices. We also recommend that the social equity licensee goals be raised to, well, we originally had a 50% similar to New York. However, after Alpesh Patel gave that inspiring speech, perhaps we could try 100%, at least for the first couple of years. Additionally, when it comes to the social consumption spaces, as you know, currently food is not allowed in those social consumption spaces. We propose
Ms. Woods,
that,
just one last comment here, because 3 minutes is up.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, we propose that REHSs, or for those who don't know, they work in anywhere from disease investigation to food inspections, be specially trained for CE certification training. Excuse me. Just to be specialized in these types of inspections to allow Black and Brown individuals who is very common for Black and Brown individuals to get a foot into entrepreneurship through the food industry. So in order to leverage their experience, we recommend that REHSs or food inspectors be specifically trained for that. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Just a clarifying question. The last group that you had mentioned, REHS, do I have that correctly?
Registered Environmental Health Specialist. And for those who don't know, we do disease investigations from COVID-19 to septic tank inspections to food inspections.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Woods?
None.
All right, thank you again, Ms. Woods, for your time and your comment this evening.
Thank you.
All right, next is Brian Cooper, who I don't see signed in here. So I'm going to go to Jamal McPherson. I also don't see Jamal McPherson. So we will go to Christian Velasquez, then Giles Ship, and then Carl Burwell. So Christian, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, Council, CRC. Thank you for having us. My name is Christian Velasquez. I'm a New Jersey medical marijuana patient and advocate. The war on cannabis has left a lot of New Jersey residents struggling to find well-paying jobs. It has also hurt the medical marijuana program as we have limited access to cannabis products, even though our medical marijuana program is 10 years old. Things I would like to see in the New Jersey cannabis industry is some sort of job placement training or grant program specifically for people with prior cannabis convictions to be able to get their foot into the legal cannabis industry. People are very eager to participate in the cannabis industry, especially people that have been put through the system for possessing or selling cannabis. These people should be the first in line to work in the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry in New Jersey is not anything new. The legacy market has been providing for the good people of New Jersey for decades. People operating in the legacy market have extensive knowledge on how this plant works from real life experience, something you cannot obtain from a class. We need a legal path for the legacy market. We cannot forget about the medical marijuana patients as we pursue adult use cannabis. The NJMMP has been plagued with delays, quality issue, flower shortages, and simply not affordable to everyone in New Jersey since its inception. You should not be priced out of cannabis medication. The people need home grow to really level the playing field. Patients should not have to be at the mercy of a dispensary when they can grow their strains at home. I propose we implement a patient co-op license for nonprofit organizations that want to grow and donate cannabis products to people that are suffering and are not able to have access. After 10 years, the New Jersey ATCs still do not have full extraction cannabis oil, FICO, available. There is no way someone who is sick and disabled can afford to medicate properly in New Jersey. To put it into perspective, 1 ounce of flour equals about 3 grams of FICO. A cancer patient needs to consume 1 gram of oil daily. So that 1 ounce, which runs about $500 at the ATC, is not even a week's worth of medicine. People that are using cannabis to fight for their lives need pounds of cannabis at affordable rates. If we have a patient co-op, patients will be helping other patients that maybe can't grow by themselves. And we can all make sure patients have the medicine they need when they need it. I have friends that have died from cancer because the state failed them with the lack of medical cannabis in New Jersey. The only reason cannabis is legal now is because people across the country grew it their own cannabis and figured out how to use it efficiently, despite what the government said. This industry is for the people and there is space for everyone, just as long as we are all given a fair shot. So many of us have been set back because of the prohibition of cannabis. It is time the state of New Jersey help the cannabis community we need a fair and open market where every citizen in New Jersey is able to cultivate cannabis and share with their friends, just like you can brew beer at home, or as Governor Murphy puts it, get a beer in a shop. The people want free cannabis,
Christian, please,
not free beer.
one last comment, because
I'm just going to end with, we also need some type of guidance for the municipalities. I'm in talks with my town of Dover, trying to get them to accept cannabis businesses. But what all the towns are doing is they're putting a temporary ban because it's convenient for them, so they have more time because of the whole deadline in August. So they feel like they don't have any direction, and I think that's something else we need to address. Thank you for your time, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Velasquez. Any questions from the commissioners? All right, hearing none, Mr. Velasquez, thanks again for your time and comments this evening.
Next, we have Giles Ship, so you can unmute yourself. And then we have Carl Burwell and then Kevin Lewis.
Okay, thank you. And I'll try to be very succinct. Thank you, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, and Director Brown. I served over 34 years in the field of law enforcement after serving in the United States Marine Corps. Unfortunately, I had the responsibility of arresting a great deal of African Americans because of the draconian drug laws that we had in place. I've seen, and I can tell you firsthand, that the social economic factors that lead to crime and drive crime and have had devastating impacts on those communities that I police, specifically in the African American and the Latino communities. So I look at this as an opportunity when we talk about social equity to right those wrongs that we had the unfortunate sworn obligation to address. So let's not miss this opportunity to change the direction of that tide and provide opportunities for those people who were most impacted. And those people I just mentioned earlier are predominantly from the African American communities and the Latino communities. I've seen firsthand when corporations and companies come into this state and other states, and also companies that are from this state, put a staff person on and say, I fulfilled my minority quota. That should not be the direction that we're going. We should be more aggressive, and we should be more determined to make sure that those people who are heading these companies, the owners of these companies specifically, really reflect the diversity that we want in place. Because if we really want to turn this tide back around, when people have a way to sustain themselves, have a way to feed their families, they're less likely to get involved in criminal activity. So we can do something that's revolutionary here with this opportunity. So let's try to make sure that those folks who want to do business in New Jersey, I'm a lifelong resident of New Jersey. Only time I left the state was I even went to college here. I left the state to serve in the United States Marine Corps. But let's try to make sure that those folks who are impacted most in this state and those people who are Black and brown get the opportunity for ownership of these companies so that they can, again, so we can reverse the mistakes that we've made in the past. Thank you for the opportunity. And lastly, the certificates. I heard talk earlier about certifications. Let's not make a process that's so cumbersome that, again, impedes the progress that we want to make with this social justice initiative, which is the way we sold it to our legislators. You know, licensing has to be in place, but let's not put any impediments in place that's going to disqualify people that really want to build healthy communities and sustainable communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shipp, and thank you for your service and your sharing your experience as a law enforcement officer in this space. So very great to hear your perspective. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Shipp?
Semper Fi, Giles.
Oh, I believe he's Director Brown. I think he's still.
Yeah,
muted.
I asked him to unmute again.
Okay.
Till the day we die.
All right. Hearing no additional questions, Mr. Chip, thank you again for your time and your remarks this evening.
So next we have Carl Burwell, Kevin Lewis, and then Timur Tutak. And I'm sure I'm butchering that, so apologies. But Carl Burwell, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Director Brown, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and the Commission for allowing all of us to speak. Most of my points were made by Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. Pearson, Mr. Allied, Mr. Chandler, and Mr. Patel, so I won't repeat those. I will just comment on kind of the standard I think the Commission should adopt, and I think that that standard should be that we shouldn't think that bigger means better. And what I mean by that is I've heard a lot of talk that if we only allow the micro licenses and the conditional licenses to get up and running, that would delay the market opening up to the consumers and patients. And it's my firm belief that we're far underestimating the ability of the cannabis community and the legacy market that's been doing it for 50 years. I think that community, if given the support with funding and operating procedures from the Commission, because you guys are writing the regulations, so you know how you want us to have these business operating. So give us those procedures and tell us how you want us to operate, and we'll operate that way as long as we're able to operate our business legally. So if you give us that support, I think the cannabis community and the small businesses will get the industry up and running for our patients and our consumers just as well as those MSOs do. The only difference and the biggest barrier as a small business owner who opened up a CBD retail store to prove to you that we can operate our businesses the same way if we are allowed to get a license would be that when we apply, our application process pins us against the MSOs who have hundreds of $millions of resources, and there's no way we can compare to them. If you separate that application process, let the MSOs compare to the MSOs and let us small businesses and micro licenses compare to the small business and micro licenses, you might see a little bit more fruitful competition because we're not being pinned against these big operators. So it is my belief that we can operate just as well as the MSOs. My only suggestion, if we feel the MSOs have to be there on day one, is to possibly think about not being so restrictive with our licensing approvals and grant anyone who applies for a micro license or a conditional license to get one if they're a New Jersey owned business who's not backed by an MSO, and let the consumers pick who succeeds. Because I think you'd be surprised that if you let everybody in, you'd be surprised that most of the cannabis community, who it's a very tight-knit community, will want to shop with their legacy market individuals who are allowed to get legal businesses than they want to shop with these MSOs. Because the cannabis community and the 50 years that it's run in the legacy market, we buy our cannabis from people we trust. And we're very loyal to those, what we call connects. So if they're allowed to get a license, we're still going to buy from them. So that is an easy way to not only make sure our market is equitable, but it's also a way to kind of take a big stab at the black market that we want gone so bad. If we just pin the legacy market against the MSOs, you run the risk of people just staying in the legacy market because they don't trust the MSOs. So that is my biggest piece. And thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I think you guys are doing a great job at being so open to letting us speak. And the fact that you're here at 9:30 on a Tuesday night just proves that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Burwell. And thanks for hanging in there until 9:30. And similarly for everyone else who's still with us. Any questions for Mr. Burwell from the commissioners? All right, hearing
Thank you for your
none.
feedback, Mr. Burwell. I do appreciate you speaking on behalf of the legacy market and do want to unpack that. In the interest of time, it may be offline though.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Thank you, Mr. Burwell, for your time and your remarks this evening.
So next we have Kevin Lewis. Kevin, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you to the commission for allowing me to speak, and I'll be very brief.
because many who've gone before me, including the previous speaker, Mr. Pearson, Ms. Jessica Gonzalez, and especially Precious, have already touched on some of the comments I wanted to make. But along the lines of license exclusivity, I applaud the commission in the lawmaking process for having the 6 different classes of licenses. You know, it definitely makes it a bit easier for a smaller participant to enter the market, especially on the latter end of that spectrum. And I know there was some talk about delivery, but I will emphasize that as an entry gateway for a smaller participant, given the lack of some of the overhead. I know insurance was touched on, and that's something I'd like to learn a lot more about myself in the coming months and weeks, but certainly if the commission could do anything about that, because in the time I have been researching that, that is a burdensome requirement. But survival in this space is going to be highly dependent on the ability for the distinct license owners to partner with others. And I would just ask the commission to emphasize and warn and, you know, protect, regulate, penalize others who try to get around that, because there will be many sophisticated entities in this space, you know, boasting seed to sale. We've heard it even come up a couple times tonight. And while I applaud that, and that's very ambitious, at least for the first 2 years or 18 months, I can't recall which one it is, the rules were set out that you can only have one of those license types at a time. And I think that's imperative for the success of some of the individual license holders to interoperate with other license holders, not just, you know, find creative and crafty legal maneuvers to, you know, get a vertical just under different names. So again, any enforcement mechanisms that can be put into place, and any ways you can stress that in the upcoming regulations, just to let folks know that at least for this initial entry period, you can only hold one license at a time. One other thing that I do recall hearing during the COVID period, and I know it was very important, especially for the medicinal users, is you allow the ATCs to deliver. I'm not sure if it's the intent to carry that moving forward, but that would you know, make it difficult for new delivery participants to come in and work with ATCs and even dispensary owners who plan to not only do retail, but deliver as well. It would be great if the delivery license holders can work with the retail establishments to get those partnerships going. I think that would go a long way in helping you know, plant roots for the Class 6 license holders. So again, I know it's late. The others have touched a lot on this, but I commend the commission for the work they've done so far.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis from the commission? Thank you again, Mr. Lewis, for your time and your remarks this evening.
So next is Timur Tutak, who I'm having trouble finding on here. So we're going to go to Miguel Moreno. I do not see Miguel signed in here. So we're reaching the home stretch here. Robert Collins, Eli Mosier. I do not see Robert Collins. So I do not see, let's see, Eli or Ravita. Okay, don't see them. Sean Chapman. Okay, I do not see Sean Chapman. Chloe Grossman. That's Chloe Grossman. And then Esteban Vasquez. And I do not see Esteban. And that is the full list of people who signed up prior to the start of today's meeting.
Thank you, Director Brown. It's been a long evening. We've been at this for a little more than 3.5 hours. And so I know that there are other folks who would like to share comments. I strongly encourage you to submit written comments to the commission. Those written comments can be emailed to us at mmp questions@doh.nj.gov. Again, that's mmp questions@doh.nj.gov. Also, I want to note for members of the public that when we do have other public comment periods, it is okay for folks who maybe didn't get a chance to speak this time around to speak at a future meeting to make sure that their voice is still heard. But I think everybody who spoke tonight, I think we heard a lot of ideas and heard a lot of personal stories, right? Which really humanizes the work that we're doing here and our mission. So with that, I want to give my fellow commissioners the opportunity to provide any closing remarks that they may have before we adjourn this evening.
Sure, I can go, Madam Chair, that's okay.
Commissioner Del Cid, go ahead.
Thank you. No, this has been some long 3 hours, but very informative. And I want to thank all of you for speaking and participating in one of our first, but not the last conversations that is around social equity. All of you presented great recommendations that touches on economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and criminal justice, and others. And as we build this new industry, we are going to have to think outside the box. We're going to have to think creatively and innovative, and we're going to learn from all of you, including what has and has not worked in other states. So I look forward to continuing to have these conversations and establishing these partnerships to ensure that the policies in this industry are equitable and empowers our marginalized communities, most importantly, those affected by the prohibition. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Del Cid. Any other commissioners wish to offer some closing remarks?
Share a few words, Madam Chairwoman. I just want to thank everyone who joined the call and especially those who stayed for the duration. Want to thank those who shared supportive feedback, personal heartfelt testimonies, as well as the constructive criticisms. This was extremely helpful to guide our decision-making, and I'm looking forward to future conversations. Looking forward to committed action so we can create a complete ecosystem based on the inputs that we received here that really addresses a multitude of harms that were mentioned, that were created by the failed war on people, especially Black and Brown families and communities. So thankful for this conversation and looking forward to more. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Commissioner Nash or Vice Chair Delgado, any closing remarks?
Yes. So this meeting was to encourage public comment related to social equity. And it is very apparent that the ideas and comments expressed tonight are very important to you and also very important to us. The comments raise awareness and they promote thoughtful discussion to us as commissioners and as we grow this cannabis program in New Jersey. So I was very touched by some of the stories, and I thank you for sharing those personal and intimate stories. The ideas and suggestions of innovative people are always welcome, and I look forward to hearing more of the ideas of all of you at our future meetings. So thank you for sticking with us, all 142 people.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Vice Chair?
Yeah, I think tonight, this hearing was very, very important. And I look forward to moving this industry forward. but more importantly, I look forward to moving this industry forward and getting it right. So thank you very much, and I turn it back to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Delgado. Yes, I think this conversation not only was an important, it was also tremendously informative for all of us. And what we commissioners will be doing from here is taking back all of your input, your ideas, your recommendations, digesting them a bit, and figuring out how do we move forward from here, right? Now that we've heard from community members what they feel they need, what systems can we, the commissioners, actually put in place, and how can we make sure that those supports are supported, that they actually live up to the goals and the values that we espouse here. As Commissioner Dusted mentioned, this is certainly not the last conversation we'll be having with people from communities and you all about equity in cannabis. It's only the first conversation. So I'm really excited I'm excited for us to put these ideas together and see what we turn out for New Jerseyans. And I thank all of you for playing a role in that, because you all, I want everyone here to know that you have shaped how New Jersey's program will be. So with that, this concludes the business that we have for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move, Madam Chair.
Second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the ayes have it and the motion is carried. Our next regular meeting will be on Tuesday, May 18th at 2 p.m. So that's 2 weeks from today. Due to the ongoing pandemic, our meetings will continue to be held virtually until further notice. So thank you everyone for sticking in, and hope to see you again. And we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.